Chapter 11:16. Zhang Xiaohua, are you kidding me? Zhang Xiaohua scolded. It's all your fault. Why are you dragging me into this? I've already told Onoro that the Huanxi Manor is still hers. She can stay here for as long as she wants. Elder Yu walked to them and bowed. I'm sorry for not being able to see your true face. I'm sorry for treating you so poorly. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Elder Yu, you are also here to join in the fun? I'm not here to join in the fun. I just want to say that the Huanxi Manor will belong to faction leader Zhang sooner or later. Miso has no right to stay here, and it's not good for faction leader Zhang. But Miso has a high status. Where can she go in the Jianghu? It's better for her to become your disciple so that she can be protected. Please forgive me. Well, Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. She looked at the kneeling Nie Qinyu, Zhang Pinger and Oyen inside. You can all get up. Seeing that the three of them were not moved by her words, she had to say, I can take you in, but you're different from Xiaohua Ji and Zhang Byron. You're my peers. How can you call me master and disciple? Nie Qinyu smiled. Master, didn't you say that you're a disciple of Beidou School and that you're here to teach us? Can we call you senior martial brother? But Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Beidou School hasn't been established yet. I was the only one there before. Now there are two kids, Xiaohua Ji and Zhang Byron. How can I have a master? Ah? Nie Qinyu was also stunned. Then she smiled and said, I don't care. I've already practiced the mental cultivation method of Beidou School. Anyway, I'm going to be a disciple of Beidou School. I don't care if I call you senior brother or master. Zhang Pinger's pale face regained some color. She said in a low voice, if it's senior martial brother, that would be the best. If it's not, then master. Anyway, you promised to take me in. Oyen was still very experienced. She raised her head and said, it's normal for people in the Wulin world to pass on their master's skills. It's even more normal for a senior martial brother to be the head of the sect. I've never heard of a senior martial brother who just started a sect. However, since master wants to start a new sect of the immortal Tao, he naturally has a new atmosphere. If he wants to abandon the old and take on the new, it's not impossible for him to be the senior martial brother who starts a sect. However, Elder Yu shook his head. There's an old rumor in the martial arts world. In the past, a few good friends practiced martial arts together. One of them attained the Tao and started a new sect. The other friends wanted to learn this Tao, and all of them became his disciples. They called him master and no longer followed the previous order. Haha, Zhang Xiaohua seemed to have come up with a plan. She shook her head and said, there's a hierarchy in learning the Tao. I have the Tao in my heart, so I can be your teacher. But Shifu and Shixiang are just titles. Isn't it all the same? As long as you respect me as your teacher in your heart, why can't you pass on the orthodoxy of Beidou School to me? Oyen, Nie Qinyu, and Zhang Pinger were overjoyed when they heard this. They said in their beautiful voices, greetings, senior martial brother sect leader. Haha, but senior martial brother likes to call himself master. Don't mind him. Zhang Xiaohua waved her big sleeves and said, you all can wait. There are still some things that need to be said. Yes, senior martial brother sect leader. The three of them stood up and said with smiles. Zhang Xiaohua pointed at Nie Qinyu and said, little fish Nie has already learned the mental cultivation method of our Beidou School. She should be the eldest senior martial sister. Hee, greetings, eldest senior martial sister. Zhang Pinger and Oyen smiled and saluted. Nie Qinyu's face flushed red, and she obediently returned the salute. When I left the Xiangxiang cult and saved Zhang Pinger from Garuda, I already promised to take her as my second senior martial sister. Hee, greetings, second senior martial sister. Oyen said with a smile. Greetings, second junior martial sister. Nie Qinyu said. The three of them saluted each other. Oyen, although you're the oldest, you're ranked last. Are you willing? Zhang Xiaohua said. Oyen replied without hesitation, no, I won't. Hee, greetings, junior martial sister. Nie Qinyu and Zhang Pinger were overjoyed. The three of them saluted each other for the third time. Well, although you're my junior martial sisters, the first disciple of our Beidou School is Zhang Byron. You must respect him. Seeing that Zhang Byron was still a child, the three of them couldn't help but feel a little funny. However, looking at Zhang Xiaohua's serious face, the three of them subconsciously stopped laughing and bowed. Greetings, Martial Nephew Byron. Zhang Byron was playing on the David's deer. When he heard the three of them saluting him, he turned his head and laughed. He lifted his leg and peed on the David's deer's back. Hee hee. The three of them covered their mouths and were about to laugh when Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, "Don't underestimate Byron. The prosperity of our Beidou school will definitely depend on Zhang Byron in the future. You will also follow Zhang Byron in the future and bask in his glory." "Yes, senior martial brother. We understand." The three of them nodded. "Well, Ji Xiaohua greets the three junior martial uncles." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and called Xiaohua over. Ji Xiaohua stepped forward and saluted the three of them seriously. The three of them also saluted back politely. It was as if they were a normal Jianghu sect now. After everyone finished saluting, Zhang Xiaohu stepped forward and said with a smile, "Congratulations, Leader Zhang, for accepting 3 disciples." Zhang Xiaohua glared at him and said, "Congratulations, congratulations. I'm far worse than your more than 7,000 loyal subordinates." No, it's quality not quantity that matters." Zhang Xiaohu replied, "I remember that Dragon Mountain also has a disciple of Leader Zhang. Including him, Leader Zhang's Beidou school already has 6 disciples." "Ha ha ha," Zhang Xiaohua laughed. "An old friend said that there are 7 stars in the Big Dipper. The first is Tian Shu, which is the Ximing star. The second is Tian Xian, which is the Silu star. The third is Tianji, which is the Luzuan star. The fourth is Tian Quan, which is the longevity star. The fifth is Yu Hong, which is the fortune star. The sixth is Kaiyang, which is the calamity star. The seventh is Yao Guang, which is the compassionate star. Collectively, they are known as the 7 stars. I have only accepted 6 disciples, and I'm still short of 1. When my Beidou school finds a paradise and opens a sect, I will build the 7 palaces of the Big Dipper, named Tian Shu Palace, Tian Xian Palace, Tian Quan Palace, Yuhang Palace, Kaiyang Palace, and Yaoguang Palace. I hereby appoint you as the Si Ming Star Lord, Si Lu Star Lord, Lu Si Yuan Star Lord, Longevity Star Lord, Fortune Star Lord, Calamity Star Lord, and Compassionate Star Lord. Only then will you show the atmosphere of my Beidou school." Everyone was overjoyed. How could a Jianghu sect say such words? Wasn't it the atmosphere of an immortal? They all bowed and said, "Thank you, senior brother sect leader, for bestowing names upon us." Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head. After a moment of heroism, he said to Oyin, "You are the youngest junior sister and have read the most books. As for the specific distribution, I will leave it to you." Everyone laughed. Only Oyin pursed her lips and smiled. She bowed and said, "Please rest assured, senior brother sect leader. This disciple will not disappoint senior brother." Then, she probed, "I just don't know. Where will our Beidou school be established? This disciple can make plans early, such as buying land, buying mountains, and so on. This matter is also extremely complicated." Now, it was Zhang Xiaohua's turn to be stunned. He opened his mouth for a long time, but not a word came out. Yes, he wanted to establish a sect, but he just touched his lips and said it out loud. Yes, Zhang Xiaohua also had some cultivation methods and artifacts in his money pouch, so establishing a sect was not bad. However, he did not expect that establishing a sect would not be as simple as playing house. Looking at the order of their identities, the 3 of them greeted each other happily 3 times. Of course, it was because they were happy, but more importantly, it was because they were curious. If it was a real sect, how could it be so complicated? With just 1 sentence, the 3 of them had established their identities. They just had to greet each other. Therefore, after listening to Oyan's suggestion, not only did Zhang Xiaohua stop talking, but Nie Qinyu and Zhang Pinger also stopped talking. Yes, Ji Xiaohua stared blankly. Even if Zhang Byron wanted to say something, he could not say it all. Master's thinking is too simple. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and looked at Oyan, saying, "If I didn't accept you, my Beidou school probably wouldn't even buy rice from the pot." Oyan laughed out loud and said, "Senior brother sect leader, you're exaggerating. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. Only by taking advantage of each other's strengths can we complement each other. Senior sisters, you two are proficient in cultivation and can practice our sect's martial arts well. As for this disciple, I'm good at management, so I'll take care of the sect's chores. Nie Qinyu and Zhang Pinger looked ashamed. Needless to say, Zhang Pinger was not familiar with these things. Nie Qinyu had also managed Rejuvenation Valley, but she had always been giving orders. Theory was more than practice. Otherwise, she would not have run out to manage things for Nie Qinyu to increase her experience. Therefore, the two of them bowed and said, "Thank you, junior sister." "Well said. Well said." Oh Yin beamed with joy. She was not proficient in martial arts and felt somewhat guilty. How could she not be happy when she saw that she could work for Beidou School? But then she frowned and said, "Senior brother sect leader, how big is our Beidou School?" "Just based on the Big Dipper Palace, then it's not much worse than Misty School. As for the wealth, although this disciple has some, but..." Then she turned to look at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu was now the leader of Misty School and also knew the importance of logistics. When he saw Oh Yin look at him, he immediately understood. However, before he could speak, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Of course. Master forgot that since ancient times, emperors did not lack hungry soldiers." As she spoke, she waved her hand, and dozens of large chests and countless gold, silver, and jewelry were thrown on the ground. She pointed at them and said, "Oh Yin, I'll leave these things to you. It's really tiring for Master to carry them. They can't be used, right? They also take up space. Do as you see fit." Ah! Zhang Xiaohu's eyes lit up. He took a few steps forward and opened a chest. It was filled with gold. He said in shock, "Xiaohua, where did you get all of this?" "Hee, you'll feel better after hearing this. These are all gifts from the Righteous Alliance to I," Zhang Xiaohua said with a grin. Then, as if she suddenly thought of something, she instructed Oh Yin, "There's food for my Zhang family in here. Don't forget." Oh Yin was first dumbfounded. She was shocked at how much wealth Zhang Xiaohua had, but she was even more shocked at the divine powers of the immortal Tao. This was the first time she was seeing an immortal Tao technique. She really did not know how the dozens of chests and the gold, silver, and jewelry scattered on the ground were produced. However, when she heard Zhang Xiaohua's words, she could not help but laugh. "Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip, thank you." -4. Chapter 11:17. Don't worry, senior brother. I know what I'm doing. Oh Yin smiled. All right. Zhang Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "You've acknowledged the sect and found your senior brother. Let's go about our own business." There were still 7-8 trigrams purple gold furnaces in the ethereal palace refining elixirs. Zhang Xiaohua was just taking a break from his busy schedule and came out to take a look. He still had to help Zhang Xiaohua completely control the disciples of the Righteous Alliance. "Senior brother." Nie Qinyu could not accept it and asked, "Junior sister and I just arrived. What should we do?" "Little fish Nie." Zhang Xiaohua could not help but use his original tone. He patted her head and said, "Since you're already here, are you afraid that you won't be able to see each other? If you're free, slowly teach Oh Yin the mental cultivation method I taught you. She's the same as you and can't practice martial arts. See if she has a chance to see the way of immortality." "Thank you, senior brother." Oh Yin was so happy that she almost jumped up. "Oh yes, little fish Nie. How's little Orange's injury?" "Thank you for your concern. Thanks to your elixir, little Orange's injury is fine. Her broken arm has been reattached." Speaking of little Orange, Nie Qinyu was a little worried. She said, "She heard that I was coming to Pingyang City and wanted to follow me. But, you know her situation. I'm afraid she can only leave Rejuvenation Valley next year." Yes. Zhang Xiaohua was a little guilty. "Of course, if I went earlier." "Oh yes, senior brother. I have something to ask. The first time I met you, the flying sword, do you still need to ask?" Zhang Xiaohua said impatiently. "I can't hide it from you even if I want to. Why do you have to ask?" I knew it." Nie Qinyu beamed with joy. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Zhang Pinger, whose face was still cold but her eyes were still flickering. He said, Pinger, you've already practiced the fragrant cult's inner strength mental cultivation method. You should walk the path of immortality through martial arts. I obtained, like water, from the fragrant cult's martial arts convention. When you've mastered martial arts, you can set foot on the way of immortality. Thank you, senior brother. When Zhang Pinger heard Zhang Xiaohua call her Pinger, she was very happy, but her mouth still said, Disciple has left Chuanxiang Jiao and will no longer practice Chuanxiang Jiao's martial arts. Your disciple is incompetent. I can't abandon the previous martial arts, but I definitely don't need to impart the incense cult's martial arts to the future martial arts. All right. Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands and said, Let's do as junior sister says. My Beidou school. I'll look around again and see if there are any books on martial arts entering Dao. Thank you, senior brother sect leader. However, my martial arts skills are still shallow, and I won't be able to use it now. That's right. If junior sister hadn't mentioned it, I would have forgotten about it. Zhang Xiaohua reached out and took out a jade bottle from her bosom. She poured out a pill and handed it over, saying, This is a meridian-nourishing pill. It can increase your strength by 10 years. Take it and find a time to take it. Joy appeared in Zhang Pinger's eyes. She reached out to receive it and said in a low voice, Thank you, senior martial brother. At this moment, she could no longer maintain the cold expression on her face. I want it. Zhang Byron, who was riding on the back of the David's deer, had a sharp nose and wanted to grab it. How could Zhang Xiaohua not give it to him? She poured out another pill. Zhang Byron didn't hesitate and threw it into his mouth. He stretched out his hand and wanted it. Zhang Xiaohua hit his chubby little hand and said with a smile, You don't know what you're eating. Such a precious pill, one is enough. Zhang Byron seemed to understand. His attention was diverted again. He grabbed Huan's bald horn and played with it with a smile. However, when Zhang Xiaohua raised her head and was about to put away the jade bottle, she noticed that everyone was looking at her strangely. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Zhang Xiaohua looked at them strangely. That, senior martial brother sect leader, can you give me one pill? Nye Qianyu asked hesitantly. You don't need it now. Zhang Xiaohua replied without thinking, Your mental cultivation method hasn't been initiated, and there's no true qi in your meridians. This pill, you can't refine it. But, my father, can he use it? Nye Qianyu's voice became even softer. Valley Master Nye had obtained the support of Zhang Xiaohua, pretending to be an immortal expert. He had already underestimated Zhang Xiaohua. When Zhang Xiaohua had visited Rejuvenation Valley last time, she had been slightly rude. Nye Qianyu was afraid that Zhang Xiaohua had other ideas in her heart. Zhang Xiaohua pondered for a moment, then nodded. He took out 2 pills from the jade bottle and handed them over. He said, One for Valley Master Nye and one for Elder Zhang. Your fate with the immortals is over, so don't ask for more. I understand. Thank you, senior martial brother sect leader. Nye Qianyu took it and quickly took out the jade bottle from her bosom and put it away. Then, senior martial brother sect leader, I would also like to ask for one. Yen said when she saw the situation. You? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. When she saw the envy in Elder Yu's eyes, she already knew. She smiled brightly and said, Fine. Every disciple in my sect, regardless of age, will be given 1 pill. She then handed the jade bottle to Yen and said, There's still 1 pill left. Thank you, senior martial brother sect leader. Yen was overjoyed. Xiaohua, I'll take your pill first. It won't be too late to give it to you when you've mastered your mental cultivation technique. I understand. I'll listen to master's instructions. Xiaohua Ji said respectfully. All right, Huan is back. I'll leave it to you in the future. I probably won't need it in the future. Yes, master. Then, she saw Zhang Xiaohu's gaze on her and waved her hand. Second brother, don't look. There's no more meridian soothing pills. I've already given you so many. Are you still greedy? No. Zhang Xiaohu waved his hand and said, I suddenly thought of a question and wanted to ask you. Okay. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Nye Qianyu and Zhang Pinger and said, You two should find a place to rest first. This is your junior sister's villa. Let her make the arrangements. Oyen smiled and said, there's no hurry, there's no hurry. We've joined the Big Dipper sect, but we haven't told Uncle and Aunt the good news yet. You two senior sisters have also just arrived, so you should do your best. Zhang Xiaohua didn't think much of it and nodded. Go, go. Let's get closer. Who knows, we might live together in the future. Senior brother sect leader, we'll go now. The three of them bowed and left with smiles. Qiu Tong, Elder Yu, and Xiaohua Ji also went back. After they left, Zhang Xiaohu pulled Zhang Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, I just remembered. Although I have some true qi in my meridians, it's still very little. How do you think I should use it against an enemy? This was indeed a problem. However, in front of Zhang Xiaohua, who had always used the Tao of Immortality as the Tao of Martial Arts, it really wasn't worth mentioning. Zhang Xiaohua reached out and took out a small sword. She didn't use her divine sense to drive it, only using the telekinesis technique to control the flying sword. Zhang Xiaohu's eyes lit up. This can I use it? Of course. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, when I have time, I'll copy down the telekinesis technique and have Niechin you give it to you. You can practice it according to the method. This can also be considered the telekinesis technique I've seen. Then what about the more complicated ones? Zhang Xiaohua smiled. Without any movement, the small sword flew in the air like lightning and instantly split into 8, shuttling back and forth around Zhang Xiaohu. It's so powerful. Looking at the flying sword that barely reacted to him, Zhang Xiaohu's heart itched uncomfortably. Oh, right, second brother. Give me the broken water sword. Zhang Xiaohu took out the short sword from his chest. Zhang Xiaohua took it and slightly channeled her true qi into it. Immediately, a 3 feet long sword light appeared, shining on their faces. Second brother, try channeling true qi into the sword like true qi. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned for a moment, then immediately became overjoyed. He slapped his forehead and said, how could I forget this? Sure enough, after taking the broken water sword, Zhang Xiaohu channeled true qi into it, and a 1.5 foot long sword light suddenly appeared. Zhang Xiaohu raised the sword and performed the misty 7 swords once, feeling incomparably carefree. When the last move came, Zhang Xiaohu roared and jumped up. After slashing at a large rock beside him, the rock split open like a piece of tofu. Good. Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands. Second brother's martial arts, who in the entire Jianghu can compare to you? Xiaohua hee. I'm sorry. Zhang Xiaohu said modestly. Oh, also, do you still remember the soaring dragon cultivation technique? You can use it with true qi. Try it. It was still the same rock. Zhang Xiaohu used the soaring dragon cultivation technique, and his true qi triple-fold hit the rock. With a piyub sound, the large rock turned into ashes. Powerful Zhang Xiaohu himself cried out. In the past, his inner qi would definitely not have such power. Oh right, Xiaohua. Using true qi to imitate inner qi is so powerful. Why don't you use it, but use your strength? Zhang Xiaohu thought of something. With inner qi, don't you need an inner qi cultivation technique? I don't have the opportunity to obtain any inner qi cultivation technique, and the time I have to practice it is short, so it is easy to arouse the suspicion of others, so I might as well use my strength to subdue others. Zhang Xiaohua laughed. You have sword arts and palm strength, so what's left is qinggong. You can use true qi to replace inner qi to practice ethereal steps, and you will have unexpected gains. Good. Zhang Xiaohu rubbed his hands and said, can I also fly like you? If you practice to the end, of course you can, but it depends on your level of practice. This flying technique was also obtained from your Misty school. Although I don't know if it is an inheritance from the Misty school, if second brother wants to learn it, I will definitely teach it to you. Good. Zhang Xiaohu was so happy that he scratched his ears and cheeks. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua frowned, looked outside and said, second brother, there are disciples from the Misty school coming from afar. They seem to be looking for you. You go busy yourself. I will go to the pill room and refine the soul-frightening pill as soon as possible. Xiaohua, you have worked hard. Zhang Xiaohu held Zhang Xiaohua's hand and said, when you get married, I will definitely give you 3 big gifts. You. Zhang Xiaohua shook her hand and said, don't mention this again, or else I will change into your appearance. Don't mention it. Zhang Xiaohu felt a little guilty. Hee, are you afraid, second brother? You have to be honest. I haven't seen you for more than 10 days. How did you refine so much true qi in your dantian? Moreover, there is a faint trace of primordialine force. It can't be? Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. This, you even know this? What do you mean? Solitary yin doesn't grow. Solitary yang doesn't grow. Isn't the black and white qi in your dantian the way to balance yin and yang? Only when yin and yang intersect, the dragon and the tiger help each other, can true qi be endless and grow endlessly. Zhang Xiaohua said seriously, but this, you should tell father and mother. Zhang Xiaohu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He waved his hand and said, forget it, I don't want to talk to you. You were just a kid, and you only took in 2 beauties. Although you didn't take them as your disciples, they look no different from disciples. How can you understand the romance? Gang leader Zhang? A misty school disciple's voice came. Zhang Xiaohua twisted her body and went underground. She said, it's not like I won't grow up. I will understand sooner or later. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip, thank you. -4. Chapter 11:18. As soon as Zhang Xiaohua left, the misty school disciple entered the courtyard. Seeing Zhang Xiaohu alone, he smiled and cupped his hands. Reporting to gang leader, this disciple has good news for gang leader. Zhang Xiaohu was startled. Most of the Misty School's disciples on duty were selected from the Misty School's Divine Machine Hall. They were relatively steady and cautious disciples. He had never seen such a disciple come forward to report before. He couldn't help but frown. Seeing this, the disciple knew that he was overjoyed. His expression changed to one of panic. Just as he was about to explain, Zhang Xiaohu suddenly understood. He clapped his hands together and said excitedly, "Mo, Elder Hu and the others are back?" The disciple nodded and replied, "That's right. Elder Hu is currently leading 2,000 Misty School disciples. Elder Li and the others have already gone to welcome them at the entrance of Ethereal Mountain Villa. This disciple saw that our Misty School disciples are finally reunited. I also forgot myself." Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohu laughed. At this moment, so what if I forgot myself? Let's go. Quickly bring me to welcome the Misty School disciples. Yes, gang leader. The disciple ran out with a smile. Outside Ethereal Mountain Villa, Hu Yuni was standing under the archway. He stared at the 2 words ethereal for a long time. At this time, Hu Yuni's hair was completely white. The wrinkles on his face were even more prominent. His originally tall and straight waist was now somewhat stooped. Cough cough. A series of hurried coughs came from Hu Yuni's mouth. Then, his waist bent even more. It was a child about 10 years old. He had delicate features and looked quite graceful. He was standing beside Hu Yuni. At this moment, he hurriedly took a few steps forward. He stretched out his small hand and rhythmically patted Hu Yuni's back. His other hand took out a jade bottle, poured out a scarlet pill, and handed it over. Hu Yuni took it and swallowed it without even looking. After a while, Hu Yuni's coughs gradually stopped. "Great Grandmaster, are you better?" the child asked. Ahem, it's nothing. Tian, it's just an old problem. I'll be fine after taking some medicine. I'm already used to it. But, Grandmaster, you've been taking this medicine for such a long time, and your condition often relapses? Is it? Sigh, Grandmaster is already so old. That's all there is to it. What else can it be? Great Master Ancestor, now that we have returned to the Ethereal Mountain Villa, you don't have to worry about it. Take good care of your body. In the future, let my father and the others worry about the matters in the gang. Your father? Hu Yuni turned his head and looked at a man in his 40s standing not far away. He shook his head slightly, but then nodded. All right, Grandmaster will listen to you this time. Hee, Daddy is the deputy leader of our Misty School. He is the one who can lead the entire Misty School. Great Grandmaster, don't worry. While they were talking, a few shadows came out of the ethereal heights like gusts of wind. Eldest senior apprentice brother. The figure in front of them called out excitedly. Boss Hu, you're finally back. A short and fat figure also ran out of the ethereal heights. Before he even saw Hu Yuni, he already shouted loudly. Second brother, fifth brother, Hu Yuni called out in surprise and unconsciously quickened his steps. Big brother, Li Jin ran to the front with his qinggong and grabbed Hu Yuni's hand. His eyes were red and slightly watery. Big brother, why have you become so old? Li Jin looked at Hu Yuni's snow-white hair and said with heartache, 5 years ago. Your hair was just white. Hee hee, 5 years have already passed. How many 5 years do we have in our lives? Hu Yuni smiled and patted Li Jin's hand. Look at you. Isn't your hair all white? 5 years ago, your hair was pitch black. Boss Hu, your complexion. Did you not eat breakfast this morning? Lu Qingyang also ran to the front and looked at Hu Yuni's appearance. He found it very strange. Fifth brother Lu, Li Jin scolded. How can you talk like that? Hee hee, fifth brother is right. In order to see you guys, I did not eat breakfast. I'm still waiting to enter the ethereal heights to eat. Let's go, let's go. I have to accompany Boss Hu to eat a few cups. Lu Qingyang laughed and pulled Hu Yuni's hand. This was not a big deal, but Hu Yuni was caught off guard and was almost pulled to the side. Big brother, Lu Qingyang felt that something was wrong and asked very strangely. Li Jin also felt that something was wrong. He reached out and felt the pulse on Hu Yuni's hand. A strand of internal energy went through Hu Yuni's meridians and immediately turned pale with fright. Big brother, it's fine, it's fine. Hu Yuni waved his hand disapprovingly. It's been so many years. At this time, Wen Hai, Lu Yuiming, and Xue Qing, who came out with Li Jin and had been waiting for a while, also stepped forward and bowed. Greetings, senior uncle. Hi, Xiaoming. Oh, Qing He. Seeing O Peng's disciples, Hu Yuni seemed to be happy and sad. He thought of O Peng and Zhang Chengyue who died in the ethereal heights. Get up, get up. You guys, are you all okay? Hu Yuni reached out and pulled the three of them up. He wiped the tears that were about to flow out and asked with a smile. Senior uncle, we're all good. Xue Qing smiled and said, we're just waiting for senior uncle to come back. This way, the disciples of my misty school will be gathered again. Yes, I've also been waiting for this moment. If I can return to the ethereal heights, I can die in peace. Hu Yuni was quite emotional. When Wen Hai, Xue Qing, and Lu Yuiming were stunned, they looked at each other and did not dare to ask more. By the way, come, Tiandian, greet your senior uncles. In the future, you'll have to rely on their support in the ethereal heights. Hu Yuni smiled and turned to the child. The child looked calm. He took a few steps forward and bowed graciously. Disciple greets senior uncles, second grandmaster, and fifth grandmaster. Xue Qing smiled and said, child, get up quickly. It's not that I haven't seen you before. It's just that after not seeing you for a few years, you've already become a little adult. Yes, I didn't feel it when I was young. Now that I look at you, you're actually similar to Qingyu when he was young. You both look mature. Lu Qingyang stretched out his fan-like hand and patted Tiantian's little shoulder. Isn't that so? Tiantian's aptitude is exceptional. She has cultivated our ethereal sect's legacy martial arts to an extremely high level. She will inherit Cheng Yu's legacy. Fourth brother, and Cheng Yu should be able to rest in peace in the underworld. Hearing this, Li Jin frowned slightly and looked at Wen Hai, who was also frowning. Hu Yuni didn't seem to see it. He turned back and said, Faction leader Xue, aren't you coming to meet your old subordinate? The man who had been waiting for a long time came forward with a face full of smiles. He cupped his hands and said, Greetings, Elder Li and Elder Lu. Xue Yuping? Vice faction leader Xue? Lu Qingyang was stunned and said, You bastard. Where have you been all these years? I have almost forgotten about you. Xue Yuping was a little embarrassed and replied, Elder Lu, the Misty School was destroyed and the Luo Xue faction was also surrounded by the Xianrong faction. I tried my best to escape, but I heard that you all went to the Incense faction. I couldn't find Elder Hu, so I could only mix with the brothers of the Luo Xue faction in the Jianghu. However, the Dalan Temple didn't seem to want to let me go, so I could only run and run. It wasn't until recently that I found Elder, Hu, and reunited with the disciples of the Misty School. A few years ago, it wasn't easy for me to take care of the disciples. On one hand, I had to teach Tian martial arts, and on the other, I had to take care of some chores. It wasn't until faction leader Shuei came that I was free. He's the vice faction leader of our Misty School. Hu Yuni smiled and said, however, I didn't work for nothing these years. Look, when I left, I took hundreds of young Eagle Hall disciples with me. Now, there are 2,000 disciples. As he spoke, he waved his hand and said proudly, it's enough to be of great use. Big brother, it's been hard on you. Li Jin smiled and helped Hu Yuni into the Misty Mountain Villa. At this time, a voice sounded from inside the Misty Mountain Villa. Master Hu, welcome back. When Li Jin looked, it was Zhang Xiaohu who hurried back from the Huanxi Mountain Villa. When Li Jin saw him, he pointed at Zhang Xiaohu and said with a smile, Big brother, this is Ahai's disciple. You should have seen him before. He's now the big faction leader of our Misty School. Big faction leader? Hu Yuni glanced at Zhang Xiaohu, who was walking over, and said coldly, how come I don't know? This? Li Jin was stunned and said with a smile, Big brother, did you forget? The last time you sent Chu Yunfei over, he had already seen big faction leader Zhang. Hehe, Chu Yunfei has seen it before, but I have never seen it before. I know this Zhang Xiaohu and know that he's Ahai's disciple, but I only know that the chief disciple of our Misty School is Zhang Chengyue. Chengyue's direct disciple should be Tian. Even Ahai isn't qualified to be the big faction leader. How can his disciple be qualified to be the big faction leader? Hu Yuni said without any trace of politeness. At this time, Zhang Xiaohu had already arrived in front of Hu Yuni. When he heard Hu Yuni's words, he frowned and looked at Hu Yuni's old face and the stubbornness in his eyes. He couldn't help but sigh and bow. Disciple Zhang Xiaohu greets Master Hu. And not bad. It's best to know your mistakes and change for the better. Hu Yuni was quite appreciative of Zhang Xiaohu's bow. He waved his hand and said, I know this isn't your fault. You were also forced to be the big faction leader by that old beggar Jingyi. However, since my Misty School's disciples have returned, you don't have to be the big faction leader of the fragrant cult. It's better to give it to my Misty School's direct disciple. Big brother, Li Jin said in a low voice, big faction leader Zhang. What big faction leader Zhang? There's no big faction leader Zhang in front of me. Hu Yuni waved his hand. Hehe, Master Hu, these are all small matters. Your return to the Misty Mountain Villa is the most important matter. I'll ask you and your Misty School's disciples to come to the Misty Mountain Villa first. That's what a junior should be like. Hu Yuni nodded with satisfaction and turned to Tian. You have to learn from your senior brother. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip, thank you. -4. Chapter 11:19. Yes, Grandmaster, I understand. Tian smiled and saluted Zhang Xiaohu. Greetings, senior brother Zhang. Before Zhang Xiaohu could return the salute, Hu Yuni said, wrong, it's senior brother Zhang. Big brother you. Lu Qingyang came to his senses and asked, what about me? Hu Yuni glared at Lu Qingyang. Lu Qingyang shrunk his neck in fear and said, nothing. All right, big brother, let's go in first. The wind is strong here, and your body? Li Jin said with concern. Yes, Grandmaster Hu, let's go to the meeting hall first. Zhang Xiaohu also said. Then, he turned and ordered a disciple, go and call Deputy Hall Master Liu of the Foreign Affairs Hall. Tell him to settle down the 2,000 disciples who came from afar. Yes, the disciple answered and left. When Hu Yuni heard this, he couldn't help but be surprised. Foreign Affairs Hall? Second brother, when did our Misty School have a Foreign Affairs Hall? Why didn't I know about it? Li Jin smiled bitterly and helped Hu Yuni up. Big brother, let's go in first. When we reach the meeting hall, you can rest for a while and then talk. How about that? Sai, look at you. You've only been back for a few days, and you've already messed up the Misty School's rules. If fourth brother knows about this, will he be able to rest peacefully in the underworld? Hu Yuni did as Li Jin said, but he was blaming them as he walked. Zhang Xiaohu's eyes narrowed when he heard this, but he immediately calmed down and acted as if he didn't care. Li Jian supported Hu Yuni in front and looked at Zhang Xiaohu, who was standing next to him. He nodded slightly at him and left first. Zhang Xiaohu was supposed to be walking in front, but when he saw this, he didn't walk and just stood there quietly. Lu Qingyang didn't know and called out, "Sect leader, aren't you going?" Zhang Xiaohu smiled. "Elder Lu, you go first." "Oh." Lu Qingyang followed his two senior brothers and left, followed by Shui Yuping and Tian Tian. Shui Yuping knew that this wasn't the time to be courteous, so she cupped her hands and didn't say much, pulling Tian Tian into the villa. "Let's go, Xiaohu." When Wen Hai walked in front of Zhang Xiaohu and patted him on the shoulder with a bitter smile on his face. Of course, Hu Yuni was the most senior elder in the Misty School. Even the former leader of the Misty School, Openg, had to be respectful in front of him. Needless to say, people like Wen Hai couldn't even muster the will to resist. "Yes, master." Zhang Xiaohu nodded with a smile. He followed Wen Hai, Lu Yuiming, and the others as they slowly entered the Misty Mountain Villa. The disciples in the Misty School had already received the news. Many people had rushed over and stood in the square to welcome the senior and junior brothers who had been with them day and night, as well as the new disciples who had joined the Misty School. However, when they saw the haggard Hu Yuni, everyone felt sad and reverence for him. "Is everyone well?" Hu Yuni walked to the steps of the meeting hall and turned to look at the familiar faces in the square. He couldn't help but think of more familiar faces that he couldn't see again. His heart ached slightly as he waved his hand and said, "Greetings, Grand Elder." The disciples in the square shouted in unison, "Everyone is back. I am finally back." Hu Yuni was filled with emotion. His eyes were a little blurry. He choked with sobs for a moment and said, The Misty School has finally stood up again. I believe, with the concerted efforts of the disciples of the Misty School, the Misty Mountain Villa will sooner or later rise again in the Jianghu and regain its former glory. Yes, let's work together and regain our glory." The disciples were also excited and shouted in unison. Hu Yuni smiled and nodded. He turned to look at Shui Yuping and Shui Tian and pointed at them. Just as he was about to speak, Li Jian quickly grabbed his hand and said in a low voice, "Big brother, let's go in and talk." "You." Hu Yuni frowned and wanted to break free. However, how could he compete with Li Jian at this moment? With half a push, he followed Li Jian into the meeting hall. As soon as they entered the meeting hall, Hu Yuni pulled his hand back and scolded, "Li Lauer, what is the meaning of this?" "Me?" Li Jian pretended to be angry and said, "Big brother, it's windy outside. Why are you still standing at such a high place? Can't you talk to the disciples when the weather is better tomorrow? Anyway, we are back and the days ahead are long. We will have plenty of opportunities in the future. Don't you think so?" Li Lauer. Hu Yuni stared at Li Jian for a moment. He wanted to say something but didn't. Only when everyone entered the meeting hall did Hu Yuni swallow his words. He waved his hand and walked to the seat of honor. Then, Hu Yuni clasped his hands behind his back and stood in the middle of the meeting hall. He quietly looked at the seat of the Grand Elder in the meeting hall without saying a word. Not long after, everyone came in and stood in front of their seats. None of them dared to sit down. Li Jian walked to Hu Yuni's side and said in a low voice, "Big brother, the disciples have all come in. Let's sit down and talk." "Sit down? How do we sit?" When Hu Yuni heard this, he pointed at the chair in front of him and said, "My seat is easy to talk about, but what about this chair? Who should sit there?" Li Jian didn't expect Hu Yuni to be so stubborn. He didn't even wait for a private discussion before putting this question on the table. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. However, he still put a smile on his face and said, "Big brother, this seat is naturally for my Misty School's Grand Elder." Then, Zhang Xiaohu, who had been quietly standing behind him, said, "Zhang Xiaohu is the Grand Elder of my Misty School. Of course, he should sit there." "The Misty School's Grand Elder?" Hu Yuni sneered, "My 2,000 disciples don't seem to know." Li Jian continued to smile and said, "Big brother, you must be joking. When I left Spreading Fragrance School that day, I didn't know where you were. How could I inform Big Brother? Therefore, without Big Brother's approval, I pushed little Hu to the Grand Elder's seat. This is my fault. I will apologize to Big Brother later. Hu Yuni sighed and said, Li Lauer, you and I are brothers. How can I blame you? I just want to ask. You, Li Lauer, and Lu Lauer can sit in this seat. Even if you don't want to take Lauer's inheritance, wouldn't it be the same if a Hai or Xiaoming sat there? Why did you choose a Hai's disciple? Then, looking at Zhang Xiaohu, he hesitated and said, He isn't a disciple of my Misty school. Big Brother, you don't know. Our situation in Spreading Fragrance School is difficult. Sitting in this seat is really inconvenient. Ha ha ha, Li Lauer, you finally got to the point. Why is it that your situation is difficult and his is smooth sailing? Why is he favored by the old beggar Jing Yi? Not only did he name himself as the chief disciple of the Misty sect, but he also directly named himself as the sect master of the Misty sect. Hu Yuni finally laughed out loud and said, Can't you use your brain to think? When did he come from Misty school? He has no foundation at all. How can the old beggar Jing Yi favor him? If he is not a spy sent by Spreading Fragrance School, how can you explain all this? Big Brother, Li Jian was a little loud again. He turned to look at Zhang Xiaohu, who was smiling and almost squinting his eyes. He said, Little Hu is definitely not a spy like Big Brother said. This, I, Lauer, and all the disciples of Misty Hall on Shershin Peak can testify. Are the people of Spreading Fragrance School here? Hu Yuni suddenly asked. No, Big Brother. They are in Martial Arts Lecture Hall and Martial Arts Discussion Hall. Because Big Brother came back, he didn't let the two deputy leaders come. Haha, what Martial Arts Lecture Hall, what Martial Arts Discussion Hall, what two deputy leaders? Hu Yuni sneered and said, One Grand Elder, two deputy leaders, and two halls. They are all from Spreading Fragrance School. Is my Misty school still a Misty school? Without waiting for Li Jian to speak, Hu Yuni continued, The Grand Elder of my Misty school is a disciple of my Misty school. If he is not a disciple of my Misty school, is this Misty school still a Misty school? Is the Grand Elder of Spreading Fragrance School, conferred by the old beggar Jing, the Grand Elder of my Misty school? Is he the Grand Elder that we should acknowledge? Looking at Li Jian, Hu Yuni said, Second Brother, I know the pain in your heart. I also know the situation of my Misty school. Therefore, this time, I also steeled my heart and brought these 2,000 disciples back to support you. Although the Misty school has many disciples arranged by the old beggar Jing Yi, she has already admitted to the entire Jianghu that she will no longer interfere with the internal affairs of the Misty school. We are going to use this weakness against her and kick out the Grand Elder that was not elected by the disciples of my Misty school. We will let the true direct disciple of my Misty school sit on the Grand Elder's seat so that Fourth Brother's legacy can continue. As Hu Yuni spoke, he became a bit agitated and anxious. Unknowingly, he started coughing again. Shui Tiantian quickly went up and handed over a pill. Hu Yuni took it, and after a while, he was finally able to breathe normally. He pointed at Shui Tiantian and said to everyone, My Misty school's head disciple is Zhang Chengyue. This child is Chengyue's direct disciple. Chengyue died and could not inherit Fourth Brother's legacy, so this child should naturally inherit it. Seeing that all the disciples of the Misty school were silent, Hu Yuni pointed at Shui Yuping and said, Even if Tiantian is still young and cannot manage the Grand Elder's affairs, Vice Sect Leader Shui is my Misty school's Vice Sect Leader. He is also Tiantian's father. If Tiantian cannot become the Grand Elder of the Misty school, then Vice Sect Leader Shui will naturally become the Grand Elder of the Misty school. When Tiantian grows up, she will inherit her father's legacy and become the Grand Elder of the Misty school. In short, Hu Yuni pointed at the gloomy-looking Zhang Xiaohu and said, In short, the appointed Grand Elder of the Misty school absolutely cannot become the Grand Elder of the Misty school. Big Brother, Li Jian's expression turned cold as he said, You came back to tell us this? You want to compete with Little Hu for the Grand Elder position? Of course not. Seeing Li Jian's unyielding attitude, Hu Yuni smiled and said, I came back to revitalize the Misty school. But if the Grand Elder position of the Misty school is taken by a disciple of the Misty school, then how will revitalization? -4. Chapter 11:20. Sai. Since that's the case. Li Jian's expression relaxed when he heard that. He smiled and said, "That's good. Then I'll use the facts to argue with you." "Go ahead. I'd like to see how that old beggar Jingyi will convince you." "Yes, I'll convince you." Li Jian looked around and said, "Everyone, please take a seat. You're all the backbone of our Misty School. This position concerns the development of our Misty School. All of you can listen and express your opinions." Everyone nodded silently but didn't sit down. They only looked at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu stepped forward and sat on the right side of the leader's seat. He nodded at everyone and they sat down. "Big brother, please take a seat." Li Jian pointed at his seat and smiled. "This is Big Brother's seat. When Big Brother wasn't around, I secretly sat there for a few days." Hu Yuni smiled. "Maybe it'll be your seat in the future." Li Jian was stunned. "Big brother, what do you mean?" Hu Yuni didn't answer. He looked at the seat beside Zhang Xiaohu and said to Shui Yuping and Shui Teng'an, "You two sit there." Shui Yuping brought Shui Tian and walked quickly to Zhang Xiaohu's side. They nodded and sat down. "All right, second brother. If you have something to say, just say it." Li Jian looked at Zhang Xiaohu and asked, "Leader, now, the time is right. Can I say it?" Zhang Xiaohu knew what Li Jian wanted to say. He smiled. "Even if you don't say it, I'm sure Elder Hu won't agree. Since everyone in the meeting hall is from Misty School, just say it." "Yes, as you command, Grand Faction Master." Li Jian nodded. He looked at Hu Yuni's unhappy expression and said, "Big brother, your injury seems to be very serious. Did you suffer it when you broke out of the Misty Peak's back mountain?" "Yes, I was hit by a consecrator from the Alliance of Righteous Sects. It hurt my vital organs, and I haven't recovered yet." Hu Yuni nodded. "Since Big Brother was heavily injured while breaking out of the encirclement, then I'm sure Big Brother already knows what happened to us." "Well, that's for sure. You've all been crippled of your martial arts. You've been captured by the fragrant cult." Hu Yuni sighed. "I know that because you've lost your martial arts, you can't resist the fragrant cult. That's why you brought the 2,000 disciples back." Big brother, didn't we tell Chu Yunfei to tell you that we have recovered our martial arts?" Li Jianqi asked. "Of course, Chu Yunfei did. He even said that there was a senior from the Immortal Path who was related to the Misty School that helped Zhang Xiaohu recover all of your martial arts." Hu Yuni said disdainfully, "I know that you guys are deliberately mystifying. You're using the empty fort strategy to confuse the incense cult. But, big brother, it's true." Lu Qingyang jumped up and shouted, "Chu Yunfei, that brat, saw me walking, and I was worried for a long time. How can you recover your martial arts when they've been crippled? And, even if I'm not the chief disciple, I've never heard Master say that there's a senior from the Misty School that's on good terms with us. If there's really a senior from the Immortal Path who could chase you to the fragrant cult, then why didn't he appear when the Misty School was destroyed? That day, as long as he appeared on the Misty Peak, he didn't have to recover the martial arts of the thousands of disciples. Why do you think he didn't do the simple things and insisted on doing the complicated things?" Li Jianqi nodded and shook his head. What Hu Yuni said was quite reasonable, but it was true that he had recovered his martial arts. Who knew why the senior from the Immortal Path didn't appear at the critical moment of the Misty School's destruction? Why did he have to wait until the Misty School was destroyed? It's useless to say more. Li Jianqi laughed. "Big brother, look." Li Jianqi pulled out the long sword at his waist. His face was slightly purple, and the tip of the long sword was 3 fingers long. "Ah, sword?" Hu Yuni couldn't sit still. He stood up and asked, "Second brother, you really recovered your martial arts?" "Not only that, big brother, there's me too." Lu Qingyang couldn't help but walk up to Hu Yuni and say, "That day, my joints were crushed by the monks of the Dalan Temple. I couldn't even stand up." "Senior uncle, we really recovered." When Wen Hai stood up and smiled, "No way. Really? Really?" Hu Yuni was stunned. He pointed at the others and asked, You all recovered?" "Yes, senior uncle. Thanks to sect leader Zhang, we all recovered our martial arts." Everyone said, however, in order to not attract the attention of the fragrant cult, we still pretended that we didn't recover our martial arts. Hu Yuni was speechless. He waved his hand and asked everyone to sit down. His tone was pleasantly surprised. That's good. With your martial arts recovered, the strength of the Misty School will reach a higher level. We don't have to worry about the disciples of the fragrant cult. Then, he seemed to think of something and changed the topic. However, this was done by the senior who has a deep relationship with our Misty School. It has nothing to do with Zhang Xiaohu. They just borrowed his hand. Haha, big brother, you have to think about it. Why didn't the senior find someone else but Zhang Xiaohu? It was a coincidence. Hu Yuni replied. Big brother, that day at Shixin Peak, Zhang Xiaohu was the only direct disciple of our Misty School who didn't lose his martial arts. Although the senior gave Dufeng and Ding Chao 10 years' worth of martial arts, he didn't give them the important task of recovering our martial arts. What do you think the senior meant by this? But Zhang Xiaohu's identity? Don't worry, big brother. Zhang Xiaohu is definitely not a disciple of the fragrant cult. When he came to our Misty School, he didn't know any martial arts. Moreover, the fragrant cult respects female disciples. Even if the old beggar Jingyi had a premeditated plan, she would still choose Yang Rupiying. Hu Yuni thought for a moment and nodded. There's no need to argue about this. You've received such a big favor from him. Of course, you have to speak up for him. Perhaps this was also premeditated by Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu sat in his chair, quietly listening and watching. It was as if he didn't care that this was a farce. Well, since Big Brother said so, then I can only admit it. I've received such a big favor from Zhang Xiaohu. Naturally, I have to repay him. Although the old beggar Jingyi wanted him to be the leader of the Misty School, he's also the candidate that all the Misty School disciples want. Li Jian sneered, but Big Brother is referring to a 10-year-old child. What qualifications does he have? He wants to be the leader of the Misty School as soon as he comes? Does he have the grace of being reborn to our Misty School disciples? Or can he pull our Misty School disciples out of the puppets of the fragrant cult? Is it just because he's the direct disciple of our Misty School's chief disciple? Li Jian looked at Hu Yuni and said, although Zhang Xiaohu isn't Zhang Qingyue's disciple, he's still Wen Wenhai's disciple. He's also the direct disciple of fourth brother. There's nothing wrong with that. Moreover, the leader of our Misty School doesn't have to be based on seniority. Didn't Big Brother give the position of chief disciple and leader to fourth brother? Hu Yuni was speechless. There's also deputy leader Xue. Li Jian looked at Xue Yuping and said coldly, presumably, deputy leader Xue knows that the reason why fourth brother promoted Xue Yuping to deputy leader is for the sake of the development of our Misty School. He wants to integrate the Luo Xue gang in the Misty School. If deputy leader Xue can stay in our Misty School for another 10 years and integrate into our Misty School, then, at this time, this Li will definitely persuade Zhang Xiaohu to step down and give the position of deputy leader Xue to someone who knows the ins and outs of our Misty School. Pitifully, deputy gang leader Xue has only stayed in our ethereal sect for less than 2 years and has only shown up in Huanxi Manor for 4 or 5 times. Now, you want to seize the position of the grand gang leader of our ethereal sect? Do you think you can rely on the fact that you used to be our deputy gang leader? Second brother, are you saying that you're going to support Zhang Xiaohu? Hu Yuni asked. Big brother, it's not that I support him, but it's the choice of thousands of our Misty School brothers. Even if you have to fall out with Big Brother, you still want to choose Zhang Xiaohu? Hu Yuni asked coldly. Big brother, it's not a matter of falling out or not. As I said, we have to make a wise choice for the development of our Misty School. Your choice is Zhang Xiaohu? Yes, our choice is faction leader Zhang. If you don't believe me, big brother, you can ask them. Li Jian turned around and pointed at the crowd. But the 2,000 disciples I brought with me all support Xue Yuping? Hu Yuni asked with a smile. 2,000 disciples? Li Jian hesitated and looked at Zhang Xiaohu. Without waiting for Zhang Xiaohu to speak, Hu Yuni said, Second brother, you're right. We have to choose a capable leader. This is what you and I think. I don't want to embarrass you, but Xue Yuping used to be the leader of Luo Xue faction and is now the deputy leader of our Misty School. He's much better than Zhang Xiaohu in terms of martial arts, prestige, and ability. He's the best choice for leader of our Misty School. You can't delay the righteousness of the faction because of your personal feelings. Capable? Li Jian sneered. Can Shui Yuping handle the disciples of Fragrance Cult and the disciples of the Righteous Alliance? What do you mean? Hu Yuni asked curiously. Zhang Xiaohu took in the disciples of the Incense Cult into the Martial Teaching Hall and the Martial Discussion Hall. Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng, the two vice sect leaders, listened to him. He also took in the disciples of the Righteous Alliance into the Zhenwu Hall and the Great Martial Hall. Wang Luan and Lu Bin, the two hall leaders, also followed Zhang Xiaohu's lead. Can Shui Yuping do the same? Hiss. Hearing this, Hu Yuni sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Zhang Xiaohu. After a while, he said, Shui Yuping might be able to do it. But how can we prove it now? Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 11:21. Li Jian said with a smile, That's right, big brother. We can't prove it. Faction leader Zhang has subdued Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng from the Fragrance Cult, and Wang Luan and Lu Bin from the Alliance of Righteousness. Shui, vice faction leader Zhang can't do that. Hu Yuni thought for a while and looked at Zhang Xiaohu and Shui Yuping. He sighed and said, Li Lauer, to be a faction leader, one must have qualifications, prestige, and martial arts. Since you've put aside qualifications, I won't mention that Shui Yuping is the former vice faction leader of Misty School. What about prestige? It can't be solved in a short time. Besides, Zhang Xiaohu has some prestige in Misty School. He can barely be compared with Shui Yuping. This. Li Jian looked at Hu Yuni with anger on his face. Big brother. You mean, you want Grand Faction leader Zhang to compete with Shui Yuping in martial arts? Li Lauer, then. Tell me, what else can you do? Convince the 2,000 men I brought with me? Convince Shui Yuping and Shui Tiantian? And you still have to convince me? Ha ha ha, big brother. Li Jian got angry and laughed. Shui Yuping was a famous master in Jianghu even before she entered Misty School. Although her martial arts cultivation is a little weaker than faction leader O, but how can faction leader Zhang compare with her? Big brother, I won't agree with your idea. And no matter what, faction leader Zhang is the faction leader of Misty School in my eyes. Others, haha, if they want to be the faction leader, they have to convince me. That's right, big brother. Sect Master Zhang is kind and benevolent. He has saved countless disciples of our ethereal sect. It was Sect Master Zhang's idea for us to come out of the incense-spreading sect. Otherwise, I would still be lying on the back mountain of Shirxin Peak, basking in the sun. Li Lauer. Hu Yuni stood up and said coldly, Are you going against your big brother? Big brother. You are the big brother of the 6 ethereal tigers. You were in the past, you are now, and you will be in the future. I respect you from the bottom of my heart. It's just that, please forgive me for being disrespectful when it comes to faction leader Zhang. Big brother. Lu Qingyang also shouted, Big clan master is so good. Why don't you like her? Eldest martial uncle, please reconsider. When Wen Hai, Lu Yuiming, and Xueqing all stood up to dissuade him. When Hu Yuni saw that everyone was trying to stop him, he frowned and hesitated. However, when he looked at Zhang Xiaohu, Shui Yuping, and Shui Tiantian, who were sitting quietly beside him, his expression became resolute. He waved his hand and said, You have all seen Zhang Xiaohu's means, but I haven't. I want to see it. As people of the martial arts world, if we don't compete in martial arts, do we compete in rock, paper, scissors? Big brother. If that's the case, Li Jian didn't know why Hu Yuni disliked Zhang Xiaohu so much, or why he respected Shui Yuping so much. However, he was indebted to Zhang Xiaohu and had thousands of Misty School disciples behind him. He couldn't stand up for Zhang Xiaohu. Elderly Zhang Xiaohu, who had been silent all this time, stood up and said with a smile, Let's do as martial ancestor who says. However, martial ancestor who must be tired after coming from afar. 3 days later, I will compete with vice faction leader Shui in the square in front of the meeting hall. Then, he turned to Hu Yuni and asked, Martial ancestor Hu, what do you think? Faction leader Zhang? This isn't appropriate. Li Jian wanted to stop him. Hu Yuni nodded and said, All right, I'd like to see what you're capable of in 3 days. By the way, for the next few days, Can I still be in charge of the Misty School's affairs? Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. Of course you can if it concerns the other disciples. As for the disciples I brought, I'll have to wait 3 days. It's fine. The vice faction leader of the Young Eagle Hall is Martial Uncle Xueqing. If Martial Ancestor who trusts her, let her make arrangements for these disciples first. Yes, faction leader. Xueqing bowed as if provoking Hu Yuni. Very good. Hu Yuni narrowed his eyes and said no more. Old man, you've gone too far. In the alchemy room of the ethereal palace, Zhang Xiaohua was on the verge of exploding after hearing Zhang Xiaohu's story. He had been scheming since Shixin Peak and spent a lot of effort to win the hearts of the thousands of disciples of the Misty School. Wasn't it all to help Zhang Xiaohu become the faction leader of the Misty School? However, all the favors he had done for the Misty School and Zhang Xiaohu's hard work couldn't compare to Shui Tiantian's status as Zhang Qingyue's direct disciple. It couldn't even compare to a single word from Hu Yuni. Forget it. Forget it. Second brother, my Beidou school still lacks disciples. Why don't you come with the 2 sisters-in-law? Although you can't become the faction leader, your future will definitely be better than that of the Misty School. Fuck off. How can your Big Dipper sect's 3 kittens and 4 puppies compare to our ethereal sect? Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, I'm the faction leader of the Misty School now. If I chicken out at the last minute, not only will I be letting down Grandmaster Li and my master, but also the thousands of disciples of the Misty School. How can I walk in Jianghu in the future? Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head, stood up and said, Why don't I just stab that bastard called Shui Yuping to death with my sword? Don't. Zhang Xiaohu knew Zhang Xiaohua's tricks. He was so scared that he grabbed him and said anxiously, Shui Yuping is a disciple of the Misty School anyway. He can't stand your ruthless methods. Besides, he's going to compete with me in 3 days. If he suddenly dies at such a critical juncture, who wouldn't know that it has something to do with me? Besides, with your second brother's current martial arts. Hee, I'm an immortal now. Why should I be afraid of him? Zhang Xiaohu said proudly. Hee, that's how it should be. Zhang Xiaohua gave him a thumbs up and said, I thought you asked me to impersonate you again. Is that necessary? I can't always rely on you. Zhang Xiaohu snorted disdainfully. Looking at the pale white flame and the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace above, he smiled and said, This method of refining pills, when can you teach me? Humph. Zhang Xiaohua also had the same face as Zhang Xiaohu. She pointed behind her with her chin and said, Your Misty School's inheritance naturally has this alchemy method. Why are you coveting my Beidou schools? Fine. Zhang Xiaohu stood up and said, I'm going back to see my parents. Are you coming? Of course. Zhang Xiaohua also floated in the air. In a few blinks of an eye, she was at the door of the alchemy room. She smiled and said, I haven't been back for a few days. Your soul-absorbing pill will be ready in a few days. I'm going to see my disciples. Aya, wait for me. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and chased after her. When they were out of the restriction, Zhang Xiaohua asked, Second brother, where's that guy? Which guy? Zhang Xiaohu asked curiously. However, he immediately understood and said, He's at the Kitty Hawk Hall. He's arranged by Martial Uncle Shui. I think he's a direct disciple of the original Misty School. They can trust him. And Zhang Xiaohua said and released her divine sense. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Her expression was very strange and she said, Hu Yuni is a skinny old man. I don't think. I've seen him in the Misty School before. Martial Ancestor who is an elder of the Misty School. At that time, not to mention you, even ordinary Misty School disciples couldn't see him. You can see Martial Ancestor who now? Yes, he's talking to a boy around 10 years old. There's also an imposing man standing next to him. That boy seems to be the Shui Tiantian you were talking about. It should be. The only one who can be with Elder who all the time is Tiania. Ha, second brother, I don't know. If I tell you that I've seen this so-called Misty School's deputy gang leader, what would you think? That's strange. Shui Yuping is the Misty School's deputy gang leader. He seems to have participated in the martial arts exhibition. It's not strange that you've seen him. Why would I be surprised? Zhang Xiaohu didn't understand. It's different from what you think, second brother. During the martial arts exhibition, it was the first time I saw a disciple of the Misty School. There were so many people. How could I remember who? It wasn't long ago that I met Vice Gang leader Shui. How? How is this possible? Shui Yuping has always been with Elder Hu. How could you have seen him? Ha ha ha. When you know where I've seen him, I'm sure you'll be even more surprised. Tell me, where did you see him? Evil Tiger Gang. Zhang Xiaohua said without hesitation, when I went from Shichui Mountain to the Evil Tiger Gang to kill the Blue Flame Token. I saw him outside Hungry Tiger Villa. At that time, he was with the Blue Flame Token's deputy gang leader Jiang of the Righteous Alliance. I thought he looked familiar. So that's why. That's impossible. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. After a while, he said faintly, could it be Elder Hu has also joined the Righteous Alliance? This time, he came back because of the Righteous Alliance? It should be. Otherwise, why hasn't the Righteous Alliance attacked after so long? Zhang Xiaohua nodded. The Righteous Alliance sure has a good plan. They've taken over the nest and chased you away, easily taking over Ethereal Sect and Nanjing Yi's thousands of fragrance cult disciples into their pockets. Zhang Xiaohu clapped his hands and said, since I know, I naturally can't let their evil plan succeed. Kill all of them. Zhang Xiaohua said noisily. No, killing for no reason will only make Elderly and the others feel disgusted. Moreover, we can't explain it to the 2,000 Misty School disciples. It's very inappropriate. Second brother, don't forget, I know the bewitching finger. With a tap on his acupoint, that guy will say anything. You know how to say it, but the problem is, others will think that you did something and will suspect you first. Zhang Xiaohu thought for a while and said, let's go, let's not talk about this for now. We'll talk about it when we get home. Okay. Zhang Xiaohua followed Zhang Xiaohu into Huanxi Villa. She still didn't look back and said hatefully, when I have time, I'll tap on this guy and see what they're planning. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 11:22. In the small courtyard of Huanxi Villa, compared to the past, what remained unchanged was the warmth of home. What had changed was that it was livelier. Zhang Xiaohua asked Dou Yin to make arrangements for Nie Qinyu and Zhang Ping'er, but after Nie Qinyu and Zhang Ping'er met Zhang Xiaohua's parents, they simply stayed in the small courtyard. Nie Qinyu did not have a mother since she was a child, so she had long been envious of the village life that Zhang Xiaohua talked about. Now that she saw Guosufei, she kept calling her aunt, which made Guosufei grin from ear to ear. Zhang Ping'er was also accepted into the Lihua Hall of Lingxiang Peak since she was a child. Although Yining treated her very well, she did not experience the warmth of home after all. At this time, in just half a day, she was intoxicated by the overflowing family affection of the Zhang family. She was so happy that she did not want to go out of the small courtyard at all. Although Zhang Ping'er had a cold temperament and was not as lively and likable as Nie Qinyu, she was still fair-skinned and beautiful. She looked like an adult, and she was very careful and well-behaved. Guosufei had noticed this. Although she did not say anything, she was secretly looking at Zhang Ping'er's chest and butt. Her breasts and buttocks weren't exactly plump, but Guosufei nodded inwardly. She looked like a woman who could give birth to children. Alas, if such thoughts were known by Zhang Xiaohua. When they came to the small courtyard, Lu Qian accompanied Guosufei to pick vegetables. Oyin stood carefully beside them and said something, which made Guosufei laugh from time to time. Zhang Ping'er carried a small wooden bucket and held a small wooden spoon in her hand, watering the flowers and plants in the middle of the courtyard and a few small vegetable fields. Nie Qinyu held Zhang Byron in her arms, and Xiaohua Ji was beside her. She pointed at the butterflies flying in the flowers and plants, as if telling a story. Byron listened attentively and was fascinated. Chang'e and Chen Shun also came, but they looked a little sad. They were accompanying Mr. Liu and were talking about something. Zhang Kai was sitting beside Mr. Liu. He was squinting his eyes and his head was drooping down. He was probably taking a nap. Little Black and Little Yellow were lying on top of the walls of the small courtyard. They would fly or run along the walls from time to time. They were never idle. They had seen Zhang Xiaohua a long time ago, but under Zhang Xiaohua's instructions, they continued to play their games. Zhang Xiaohu entered the yard first. Hearing the noise, Chang'e stood up first and asked, "Xiaohu, where are you going?" Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Zhang Xiaohua come in as well. His eyes lit up, and a look of realization appeared on his face. He smiled and said, "I forgot. With Xiaohua here, what are you afraid of?" Zhang Xiaohu knew what Chang'e meant, but he didn't want his parents to worry, so he nodded slightly. "Senior brother sect leader, you're back?" Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come in, Yin, Zhang Pinger, and Nye Qinyu all stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Haha, I'm back, I'm back." Zhang Xiaohua enjoyed it very much. He waved his hand and smiled. But then he noticed the changes in the few rooms that were usually empty. He frowned and said, "You are not going to live in the small courtyard, are you?" "Can't we?" "Senior brother sect leader?" Nye Qinyu said curiously, "Isn't it nice to live here? I like this small courtyard after just half a day. Isn't it the same to live anywhere?" Zhang Pinger also pursed her lips and said, "If I live here, I can also protect uncle and aunt." "Greetings to master." Xiaohua stepped forward and bowed. "Senior uncles are also good here. The small courtyard is more lively." "But—" Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head and couldn't say anything. Guo Sufei scolded. "But what? I think it's good for them to live here. Isn't it lively at home? If Chang'e and Chen Shun didn't have to go back to Mingsue Hall, I would like them to live in the small courtyard with Xiaohu." "Mom, I'm talking about Xiaohua. Why did you stop me?" Zhang Xiaohu obviously had a guilty conscience and immediately complained. "Aunt, you're right." Yin helped him. "But there's no place for me to live here, let alone gang leader Zhang and Chang'e." Zhang Xiaohua glared at her angrily. "There are many big courtyards in Huanqi Villa. Why don't you vacate one?" "Haha, I'll follow senior brother sect leader's order and do it right away." Yin said with a smile. "Forget it. Don't make trouble." Zhang Xiaohua waved his hand. At this time, Zhang Kai was also awakened. He frowned and said, "Xiaohua, what are you busy with? You're not at home most of the time. Today you created a Beidou school and even accepted Villa Head O as your disciple? What do you want to do?" Mr. Liu coughed and poked Zhang Kai with his arm, whispering in law, "Well, the children have their own affairs. You don't have to worry about them." "Well, Villa Hedo sent a jar of green bamboo leaf the day before yesterday. Do you want to taste it?" "But is he going to accept disciples or do something else?" Zhang Kai always listened to Mr. Liu, so he unconsciously lowered his tone. "Xiaolong, bring the wine and ask Qian to cook some dishes." "Yes, Dad." Zhang Xiaolong came out of the room with a small porcelain jar in his hand. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua and then looked at Nye Qinyu and Zhang Pinger who had walked aside. He winked at Zhang Xiaohua and gave her a thumbs up. Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes angrily. When she was about to turn around, she heard Zhang Xiaolong shouting again, "Xiaohua, move your long sword. Don't always leave it in the yard. It's in the way." "Got it, big brother." Zhang Xiaohua replied angrily. She walked to a corner of the yard and picked up the Great Wisdom Sword. Holding it in her hand, she went straight into her room. The Great Wisdom Sword was Run Xiaoyao's signature weapon. After returning to the Guozhuang house, Zhang Xiaohua rarely used it. She just left it in the yard. Translator, Transin editor. Transin as night fell, the lights in the small courtyard of the Zhang family were brightly lit. Everyone sat in a circle, eating and chatting. The atmosphere gradually became lively. Nye Qinyu and Zhang Pinger had only eaten a little before, so this was their first meal. They were a little restrained at first, but gradually, they relaxed and enjoyed the dinner that they had never experienced before. Although this simple meal was not as exquisite and delicious as a professional chef, it was delicious and tasty. It was not something that an outsider could make. The meal took a long time to finish. Zhang Xiaohua only ate a little bit of vegetables and chatted with everyone. Nye Qinyu and Zhang Pinger, on the other hand, were travel-worn. They rushed day and night. Now that they saw Zhang Xiaohua and confirmed their future plans, they couldn't help but feel sleepy and yawn frequently. When Yin saw this, she told Guo Sufei the reason. Guo Sufei was even more tempted. She glared at Zhang Xiaohua a few times and stood up. She wanted to help the two clean up the room with Lu Qian. How could Yin let her do it? She quickly said, Auntie, don't get up. Put everything in the room properly. Just spread it out casually. Guasufei smiled and said, I'm not a grandmother from a rich family. Since you are here, you are my family. How can I not care? Let's go. Let's put the two girls to sleep first. Yin saw that she couldn't stop Guasufei, so she followed. The girls left the room. Zhang Xiaohua saw this and whispered to Zhang Xiaohu, stay at home. I'll help you. Well, be careful. Don't do anything. I have a plan. Zhang Xiaohu nodded. Where are you going? Zhang Kai scolded. Come back when it's time for dinner. After dinner, put down the bowl, wipe your mouth, and run away. Your mother still has something to ask you. Zhang Xiaohua quickly walked to the door and said, Father, the moonlight is just right outside. I'll go and enjoy the moonlight. When I have some ideas, I'll tell you and Mr. Liu. Then she turned around and disappeared. You this child, Zhang Kai scolded. Why didn't you tell me why you let two girls live in your house? Father, these two are Xiaohua's disciples. Didn't I tell you? Zhang Xiaohu explained. Are you teaming up to coax me? He accepted Xiaohua as his disciple and Byron as his disciple. Why did he accept two female disciples who are much older than him for no reason? Well, if he accepts disciples, then so be it. He calls them master, and the disciples call him senior brother sect leader. What kind of mess is this? Are you bullying me because I don't know anything? That's true. Zhang Xiaohu scratched his head and explained. Maybe Xiaohua was the one who taught the three of them martial arts. That's why he called himself master. Hee. Xiaohua next to him picked up a mouthful of food and fed it to Zhang Byron. She laughed and said, Master. He likes others to call him master. He also likes to call himself master and I. That's all. Ha ha ha. Mr. Liu next to them laughed and said, I was wondering why. So it's like this. I have to think about it. Cough cough, in-law, if you have time, help me talk to Xiaohua. You know that I've always been clumsy with words. Xiaohua is not by my side, and I miss him. But he's by my side, and I see him idling around every day. It's annoying. I have to do something. Father, you can't be thinking of planting a few fields outside the door, right? Zhang Xiaohu wanted to laugh. The more he thought about it, the more he felt it was possible. Sure enough, Zhang Kai said, I say, my back and legs have been aching lately. If Xiaohu didn't remind me, I would have forgotten. The land outside the door is quite fertile. If we plant some crops, next year, we'll have a good harvest. Xiaohua has a lot of strength. Let him plant a few fields outside the door. Sigh. Xiaohu, what are you doing? Father is talking to you about something serious. Don't run away. Father, this kind of thing. You can just nag me. Anyway, I exist because of other people. If I want to farm, so be it. But other people exist because of themselves. I don't have time. Zhang Xiaolong said bitterly as he held his bowl of rice. My son has grown up and can't be controlled by his mother. Zhang Kai sighed. After Zhang Xiaohua went out, she was afraid of her father's nagging. She turned around and hid underground. When she exposed her head, she was already in the young eagle hall. She found Shui Yuping's house with her divine sense. She hid her figure and went in directly. Shui Yuping was standing in the house with his hands behind his back. He frowned and looked down at the ground. He was pacing back and forth. Zhang Xiaohua appeared behind him like a ghost. Before Shui Yuping could notice anything, she pointed at Shui Yuping's major acupuncture point on his back. Please vote monthly. Please vote recommendation. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 11:23. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Zhang Xiaohua's face was frosty. She looked at Shui Yuping, who was sitting on the bed with a dazed expression. She snorted and said, All right, you can sleep now. Remember, nothing happened tonight. Yes, nothing happened today. Shui Yuping muttered and turned over to lie on the Kong. Zhang Xiaohua was not in a hurry to leave. She stood in the room and waited for a moment, then turned around and went back to the alchemy room. 3 days later, the sky was clear and the autumn wind brought the smell of autumn. But in the square of the ethereal heights, The atmosphere was not the joy of harvest. Among the 2,000 disciples brought back by Hu Yuni this time, hundreds of them were the elites of the Young Eagle Hall. They were very familiar with the disciples of the Misty School and had integrated into the Misty School in just 3 days. The other 1,000 disciples were secretly recruited by Hu Yuni in the past few years. 3 days was still a short time. At this time, they were squeezed on one side of the square with Shui Tiantian and Shui Yuping. There was a faint gap between them and the disciples of the Misty School. In addition to these people, the hall masters also brought their elite disciples to surround the square, waiting for today's competition. Shui Qing led the Young Eagle Hall disciples and stood beside Shui Yuping's disciples. He turned his head to look at the confident Shui Yuping and the slightly nervous Shui Tiantian behind her. He couldn't help but frown slightly. After instructing the disciples behind him, he walked to Aunt Qin's side. Behind Aunt Qin were Chang'e and Changchun. When they saw Shui Qing coming, they both saluted. You two don't seem to be worried about Grandmaster? Seeing Chang'e and Chen Qin's relaxed appearance, Shui Qing was very surprised. Yes, I don't know what trump card Grandmaster Zhang has. I also feel strange, but these two girls won't say anything, Aunt Qin said with a smile. But there was also some worry in her eyes. Shui Qing said, it's best if you have a trump card. Otherwise, my Misty School's great situation will be ruined again. Aunt Qin nodded. That's right. Ever since my Misty School left First Faith Peak, it was under sect leader Zhang's command. When we arrived at Misty Mountain Villa, it was with great difficulty that we managed to deal with the incense cult and the Righteous Tao Alliance's disciples. If something goes wrong this time, or if Shui Yuping wins, I'm afraid we'll have to fight again? I don't think so. But judging from Grand Faction leader Zhang's methods of subduing the disciples of the Righteous Alliance and the incense cult, Shui Yuping might not be able to subdue them if he's not here. Internal strife is a small matter. The overall strength of the Misty School will definitely drop. It's difficult. Shui Yuping used to be the deputy faction leader of our Misty School. Her kung fu was almost as good as the 6 tigers of Misty. Grand Faction leader Zhang, his kung fu is not even as good as the 2 beauties of Misty. I'm afraid it's not. Shui Qing looked at Du Feng and Ding Chao, who were not far away inside. It's strange. Why did the immortal senior who is related to our Misty School only improve the kung fu of Ding Chao and Du Feng, but not Grand Faction leader Zhang's kung fu? Du Feng and Ding Chao have been practicing kung fu since they were young. Grand Faction leader Zhang, after all, he hasn't been practicing kung fu for long. But Grand Faction leader Zhang captured Wang Dong of the incense cult. His kung fu seems to have improved by leaps and bounds. He should be able to compete with us. Shui Qing was still worried. Since Grand Faction leader Zhang's kung fu has reached such a high level, why didn't the senior work harder? Chang'e and Chen Shun heard Shui Qing complaining about the so-called immortal senior, Zhang Xiaohua. They laughed in their hearts, but they couldn't show it. They could only stammer. Perhaps that senior has his own considerations. The problem is that the Misty School's kung fu is about to be picked by others. Isn't he worried? Shui Qing said impatiently. Sure. Hall leader Shui, Grand Faction leader Zhang is here. Aunt Qin's eyes were sharp. She had already noticed the meeting hall and immediately reminded him. Shui Qing looked up. As expected, several people walked out of the meeting hall. Hu Yuni walked in the front, followed by Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, and Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu held the blue water sword in his hand and was expressionless. Hu Yuni walked to the front of the square and looked around at the crowd. Before he could speak, he coughed rapidly. He coughed so hard that his back bent. Li Jian quickly stepped forward and patted his back. He wanted to send a wisp of true qi into his body, but Hu Yuni lowered his head and raised his hand. He waved it vigorously and signaled him to stop. After a while, Hu Yuni caught his breath and took out a jade bottle. He poured out a pill and put it into his mouth. His pale face gradually became rosy. Then he said in a low voice, "The meridians in my lungs are damaged. I can't take external inner qi. The more I send it in, the worse it will be." Li Jian sighed. He wanted to ask more, but after looking around the square, he took 2 steps back. Brothers of the Misty School, Hu Yuni took 2 steps forward and said loudly, "Whether it's the brothers who have just joined the Misty School or the brothers who have gone through great changes in the Misty School, you must know who I am. However, I would like to introduce myself. I am Hu Yuni, the eldest senior brother of the original Misty School's Sect Master Openg. I am also the original Grand Elder of the Misty School." At that moment, Hu Yuni's inner chi had not fully recovered and he could not circulate it. Although his voice was loud, it could not reach the ears of everyone in the square. However, everyone listened quietly, so his voice could barely reach their ears. Perhaps many of the Misty School's disciples are dissatisfied with me. They are muttering in their hearts, "If I didn't come, Zhang Xiaohu, your sect master Zhang, would have run the Misty School well. You are all looking forward to the reunion of the Misty School's disciples. But now that we are back, we are immediately fighting for the position of sect master. Wouldn't that disappoint you?" Boom. The disciples could no longer hold back and began discussing in low voices. However, Hu Yuni's voice had long been drowned out by everyone's voices. Li Jian took a look and said loudly, "Disciples, be silent. Listen to Elder Hu." His voice was leisurely transmitted into every disciple's ears. The disciples' hearts trembled, and they all shut their mouths. Hu Yuni smiled bitterly and said, "I know what you are thinking, but I have no other choice. Everyone knows that Zhang Xiaohu's position as sect master was given to him by Abbess Jingyi from the Cult of Fragrance, even if we are the ones who elected him. But Zhang Xiaohu's seniority is low and his martial arts is weak. How can we convince the others? Although the heroes of the pugilistic world won't say it in front of us, who knows what they will say behind our backs? Everyone doesn't want others to point at their backs and say, 'The Misty School's sect master was appointed by the Cult of Fragrance and is a puppet of the Cult of Fragrance.' No." The disciples behind Shui Yuping shouted in unison. The other disciples were about to speak, but Li Jian waved his hand and they all shut up. "When I came 3 days ago, I made a big deal out of this. I'm sure the pugilistic world has already heard about it. No matter what they thought in the past, they will definitely look at the Misty School in a different light now. They will know that the Misty School is not a pawn of the Cult of Fragrance. It is a truly independent Misty School." Zhang Xiaohu heard this and couldn't help but laugh secretly. How pompous. If it weren't for the soul-scaring pill, wouldn't Ming Qing and the rest have already jumped out? He looked at Ming Qing, Gao Kunheng, and the rest. They were all lazy and didn't take Hu Yuni's words to heart. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohu had an extremely absurd feeling. Hu Yuni was like a person displaying his slight skill in front of an expert. He was holding an axe and playing with it while talking about exchanging pointers. But who didn't know how to deceive oneself? Of course, this competition is also a test for Zhang Xiaohu. Since he wants to be the sect master of the Misty School, he must have been prepared for this kind of test. Don't you think so, Zhang Xiaohu? Seeing that Hu Yuni was looking at him, Zhang Xiaohu grinned and said, "Elder Hu is right. How can this disciple not listen to Elder Hu's arrangements?" Hu Yuni ignored the sarcasm in Zhang Xiaohu's words and continued, "Only a sect master who has passed this test can be the true sect master of the Misty School. If it was any other day, they would be applauding and praising him. But other than the cheers of the people behind Shui Yuping, the other places were cold and cheerless." Hu Yuni didn't seem to be embarrassed. He smiled and said, "Heaven knows this old man's heart for the Misty School. Although I don't have everyone's understanding now, you will know in the future." Then, he pointed at Shui Yuping and said, "Vice Sect Master Shui was personally appointed by the previous Sect Master of the Misty School, Openg. Her loyalty and talent have been recognized by Sect Master O. She has the ability and reason to take over the responsibility left behind by Sect Master O. Only she can stop the mouths of the people of Jianghu. However, the Misty School isn't a place where one person has the final say. This old man can't arbitrarily decide the candidate for the Sect Master of the Misty School. Therefore, this old man used a martial arts competition that is commonly seen in Jianghu to let everyone decide who is the most suitable Sect Master of the Misty School. Of course, this is also an excellent opportunity for Zhang Xiaohu. Let him use martial arts to show the heroes of Jianghu that he is not a puppet of the incense cult. He has the ability to resist the incense cult's orders. Then, He turned his head to Zhang Xiaohu, as if hinting for Zhang Xiaohu to speak. You still want to pretend to be obedient after getting such a good deal? Zhang Xiaohu was slightly angered. Even though Hu Yuni was eloquent enough to talk about the pros and cons of the matter and mentioned that he had no intention of interfering with the selection of the sect master and only wanted to provide an explanation to the entire ethereal sect, Zhang Xiaohu did not know whether to laugh or cry at his point of view. Hu Yuni had chased him down from the position of sect master and even gave him a dignified reason to thank him and express his acceptance of the matter. Wasn't this just slapping his own face? Zhang Xiaohu walked forward and waved the jade water sword in his hand. He said in a low voice, "If you want to fight, I'll fight. Why are you being so noisy?" Good. A voice of praise came from the lecture hall. "If you want to fight, I'll fight. Mighty Sect Master Zhang." This voice was the spark that lit the fuse. Another wave of cheers came from the square. "If you want to fight, I'll fight. Grand Gang Leader Zhang, you're mighty. Please vote monthly. Please vote recommendation. Please bookmark. Please tip. Thank you." -4. Chapter 11:24. In the square, Hu Yuni was rather embarrassed. He no longer had the feeling of being the center of attention. He tried to say something, but his hoarse voice was drowned out by the cheers. Maybe I'm wrong? This was the first time Elder Hu was touched by his own way of handling things. He was confused for a while, but then he saw Shui Tian clenching her fists at the side of the square. Hu Yuni felt warmth in his heart, and his eyes gradually became determined. Maybe I'm wrong, but why should I regret it? After thinking, Hu Yuni waved his hand. Shui Yuping saw Hu Yuni's signal and jumped out of the crowd with her long sword. She went straight to Hu Yuni and Zhang Xiaohu. Li Jian saw Shui Yuping come out, and the cheers on both sides of the square were a little chaotic. He looked at Hu Yuni, whose white hair was messy in the wind, and felt a little sad. He stepped forward and said in a clear voice, "Everyone heard what Elder Hu said. I won't say more. This competition has been approved by faction leader Zhang, so please wait and see." When they heard that Zhang Xiaohu had agreed to the competition, the crowd couldn't help but recall the time when Zhang Xiaohu had shocked the disciples of the fragrant cult. Back then, he had single-handedly barged into the alchemy hall and captured Wang Dong and a few other disciples. Hence, the cheers became even louder. Mighty faction leader Zhang became even louder. Li Jian frowned slightly, but he was secretly happy. He looked at Hu Yuni and then at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu knew and raised the sword in his hand. In an instant, the whole square was silent. A voice resounded in the square. "Vice faction leader Shui, please." The voice was not loud, but like Li Jian's, it reached the ears of all the disciples of the Misty School in the square and shocked them. When Shui Yuping heard this, she was even more shocked. She thought to herself, this Zhang Xiaohu is just a kid who has just practiced martial arts for a few years. How can his internal strength be so exquisite? Judging from the sound, it's not inferior to Li Jian's. Could it be that the message was wrong? Shui Yuping thought about what Hu Yuni said and felt a little more courageous. It's just that someone forcefully raised his cultivation. If it was someone like Du Feng, I might consider it for a while. But you just have profound inner strength. What kind of elixir did you use to exchange for it? If you use it with your moves and use it freely, I'm afraid it will be too much for you to do in a few years. Thinking of this, Shui Yuping smiled and said, "Faction leader Zhang, please." After saying that, he stretched out his sword and took a defensive stance. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohu sneered and said, "Since deputy faction leader Shui is so stubborn, I will make the first move. Please, this Shui is a guest from afar, so I'll follow the host's wishes." "Well said, Vice Gang Leader Shui. Please take this." As soon as Zhang Xiaohua finished speaking, he stretched out his sword. This was the starting stance of the 7 ethereal swords. It was also a way to welcome a guest. Okay, Shui Yuping had seen Openg use the 7 ethereal swords before. Although Zhang Xiaohu's move was not as profound as Openg's, the sound of the tip of the sword piercing through the air was not to be underestimated. Good move. Shui Yuping blocked with her sword and slanted her body. She wanted to use the tip of her sword to cut Zhang Xiaohu's fingers. Zhang Xiaohu had already focused on the 6 harmonies fist technique before he had mastered his inner force. Of course, he knew the power of pure moves. Therefore, when he was on Shirshine Peak and his inner force was crippled, he took the time to focus on practicing the sword technique. Even though his inner force had been changed to genuine qi, it was not easy to control it freely. However, he was immersed in the hard work of the 7 misty swords, and now he could see the results. Zhang Xiaohua was not in a hurry. He flipped his jade water sword so that the sharp blade was facing outwards. He raised his wrist slightly and went over the tip of Shui Yuping's sword. He also attacked Shui Yuping's wrist. The 2 people fighting in the arena didn't say anything, but Li Jin frowned. The 2 people just tested each other with 2 moves. They didn't cut their fingers, but stabbed their wrists. It was quite vicious. Therefore, Li Jin glanced at Hu Yuni and hollered in a deep voice, "Sect Master Zhang, Vice Sect Master Shui. This is a sparring competition with an ethereal sect. May I be so bold as to ask the 2 of you to show mercy?" "Yes, I understand." Shui Yuping answered first. Hee, Misty School? If Li Jin knows that Shui Yuping is a member of the Decent Alliance, I wonder what he will think. Zhang Xiaohu thought, but he still said with a smile, "Thank you for your reminder, elderly." With Li Jin's reminder, the 2 people could not stab each other's vital parts with their long swords. They changed their moves and attacked the body, arms, and other places where the flesh was thicker. After a while, the 2 people gradually found the gap between them. Needless to say, although Zhang Xiaohu's internal force was excellent and his moves were exquisite, he had only practiced martial arts for a short time. The subtle differences could be seen. Gradually, Zhang Xiaohu was at a disadvantage. At this time, Chang'e and Chen Shun had realized that this Zhang Xiaohu was still the same Zhang Xiaohu, not the Zhang Xiaohua disguised as Zhang Xiaohu. They could not help but panic. Shui Yuping laughed and said, "Faction leader Zhang, be careful." Then, without waiting for Zhang Xiaohu's response, she raised her sword above Zhang Xiaohu's aqua water, and then put 2 fingers of her left hand together. Zhang Xiaohu tried to pull out the aqua water, but he found that there seemed to be a suction force on Shui Yuping's long sword, which was pulling him to Shui Yuping's 2 fingers. As his genuine qi increased, the suction force became stronger. If he could not get rid of it, he had to give up the sword. Of course, giving up the sword meant losing. Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohu was not frightened, but laughed and said loudly, "Deputy Faction Leader Shui, you're really good. There are not many people in the Misty School who can match you." Then, he changed the topic, "But I'm not one of them." As he spoke, he opened his eyes slightly and poured all of the true energy in his meridians into the jade water sword. The tip of the jade water sword suddenly flashed with a brilliant light. Then, it suddenly expanded and grew to a length of over 2 feet. Li Jin was the first to notice the change of the aqua water sword, and blurted out, "Sword radiance?" "Yes, it's sword radiance." Zhang Xiaohu was full of pride. With a roar, he waved his hand, and the sword radiance twisted along Shui Yuping's long sword, which was immediately broken into 2 pieces. And the sword radiance was also aimed at Shui Yuping's 2 fingers. Shui Yuping exclaimed. Before he could recover from the shock of seeing the sword radiance of the aqua water sword had already broken his long sword. But before he could move his eyes away from the broken sword, the sword radiance had already reached his 2 fingers. Faction leader Zhang Xiaohu. Although Li Jin was shocked, he had used the sword radiance before, so he was the first to wake up. If Zhang Xiaohu cut off Shui Yuping's 2 fingers, not only would the 2,000 disciples of the Misty School be angry, but it would also be a loss to the overall strength of the Misty School. Therefore, he had to warn Zhang Xiaohu. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly in his heart. The sword radiance of the aqua water sword circled around Shui Yuping's hand, and then he withdrew it. When Shui Yuping came back to his senses and looked down, he saw that there was a small cut on his sleeve, and his skin was exposed. Alas! Shui Yuping smiled bitterly in his heart. Although he had overestimated Zhang Xiaohu, he still underestimated him. In the entire Jianghu, how many people could use the sword radiance? This, Zhang Xiaohu must have had some lucky encounter. His inner strength cultivation was actually on par with Li Jin, the most powerful disciple of the Misty School. With this sword radiance, what can I rely on to challenge Zhang Xiaohu? Faction leader Zhang's inner strength is profound. I am no match for him. Shui Yuping was a straightforward person. Seeing that things were not going well, he immediately changed his tone and cupped his hands in front of his chest. Hu Yuni was watching from the side. At first, he was shocked, but then he looked worried. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. At this moment, a shrill voice sounded, "Senior Brother Zhang, I would like to ask for some advice on martial arts. What do you think?" When Zhang Xiaohu turned around, he looked nervous, but there was a hint of provocation in his eyes. It was as if this Zhang Xiaohu was a shameless disciple of the incense cult who had taken away what belonged to him. Tian? Shui Yuping was shocked. She was about to scold him, but then she remembered that Tian was a direct disciple of the Misty School, not a kid from her family. She turned to look at Hu Yuni. Hu Yuni was delighted, but then he pulled a long face and said, "Tanyan, you're being ridiculous. This is the place where Zhang Xiaohu and your father will compete. If you want to compete, you have to ask for Senior Brother Zhang's permission. You can't be so reckless." This, Zhang Xiaohu thought to himself, is it necessary? You've made it so clear. What else can I say? That's right. What else could Zhang Xiaohu say? He could only smile and say, "It's okay." Junior brother Tian is the direct disciple of the chief disciple of the Misty School. His status is even more honorable than mine. It's my honor to compete with junior brother Tian. Zhang Xiaohu's words were polite, but in Hu Yuni's ears, it was like a clap of thunder that woke him up. The melancholy on his face was swept away. He smiled and said, "You two can compete first. I have something to say later." Okay, Zhang Xiaohu put away his jade water sword and struck a 6-harmony fist pose. He smiled and said, "Junior brother Dong, please." Wait, Shui Tian stood in front of Zhang Xiaohu without any fear. He waved his small hand and said, "Senior brother Zhang's inner strength is profound. It's definitely not something I can compete with. Therefore, I have a condition." "What condition?" Zhang Xiaohu's heart skipped a beat. "Is it that I can't use inner strength?" Shui Tian said proudly, "Yes." When Zhang Xiaohu heard this, he was shocked, but at the same time, he couldn't help but laugh secretly. This little thing doesn't use inner strength, but it's something that my younger brother has already played with. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Of course, I'll do as junior brother says. Zhang Xiaohu immediately agreed. Okay, senior brother Zhang, please take this. Shui Tian was overjoyed when he heard this. He crossed his fists and attacked. However, just as he used his move, Zhang Xiaohu was stunned on the spot. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 11:25. Seeing Shui Tiantian's fist technique, Zhang Xiaohu was stunned on the spot. Then, he almost looked up to the sky and laughed. Yes, or maybe he was rolling on the ground and laughing until he couldn't breathe. The fist technique that Shui Tian used was the Big Dipper magical fist that Zhang Xiaohua had sparred with Zhang Xiaohu countless times in the past. Zhang Xiaohu had not only sparred with Zhang Xiaohua's Big Dipper magical fist, using the 6 fists. It could be said that this set of Big Dipper magical fist was born in Zhang Xiaohu's small house in the Lotus Flower Escort Agency. When Zhang Xiaohua was practicing, she often asked Zhang Xiaohu about it. How could Zhang Xiaohu not be familiar with the Big Dipper magical fist? Yes, even though Zhang Xiaohu couldn't perform this Big Dipper magical fist, he knew all the moves in it. Using the 6 fists to counter it wasn't difficult at all. Not to mention, Shui Tian was only taught by Zhang Xiaohua using the fist manual that Zhang Xiaohua had recorded down. This Big Dipper magical fist was also strange. For disciples like Zhang Chengyue who had already practiced this fist technique, every time they performed this fist technique, a strange feeling would arise spontaneously. Unknowingly, the moves of the fist technique would deviate and they wouldn't be able to display the power of the Big Dipper magical fist. As for Shui Tian and the other young disciples who were selected by Zhang Chengyue to practice the Big Dipper magical fist, when they first started practicing, they could still follow the rules and perform according to the fist manual. However, if they came into contact with other fist techniques in the future, that strange feeling would arise. Therefore, the moves of the fist technique would naturally be distorted. Therefore, even though Shui Tian knew that this fist technique was profound, after practicing it for a long time, his strength would only increase slightly. The warm current that could temper his bones never appeared. When Shui Tian used this Big Dipper magical fist to compete with Zhang Xiaohu, his thoughts were self-evident. However, since he had met Zhang Xiaohu, who had often sparred with the fist of the North Star, his plan was perfect. Zhang Xiaohu's six-joint fists were executed smoothly, as if he had not encountered the strange fist of the Big Dipper. After a dozen moves, he immediately grasped Shui Tiantian's fist of the Big Dipper and punched Shui Tiantian's ribs. Immediately, he jumped out of the circle and said with a smile, "Junior brother Tiana, are you convinced?" This disciple is convinced. Shui Tiantian's face and ears turned red. He used to fight with others with his fist technique, but he was not used to it and was in a hurry, which allowed him to catch a flaw. Who knew that the fist technique that he regarded as his trump card was worthless in the eyes of others? How could he not say the word convinced? All right, Tian, stop fooling around. You can leave first. Hu Yuni came to the rescue in time. With a wave of his hand, he let Shui Yuping and Shui Tongyan leave. Zhang Xiaohu stood at the side. Just like before, he was silent and prepared to deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. He wanted to see what other methods Hu Yuni could use to remove him from the position of the Misty School's Big Dipper Master. Sure enough, Hu Yuni looked at Li Jian and turned to Zhang Xiaohu and said with a smile, "I didn't expect your martial arts to be so brilliant. This makes me feel quite gratified." "I don't dare. It's all because of Master's teachings. This disciple still has to thank Master for his cultivation." Ahai. Although this old man's martial arts have not recovered, I can see that Ahai's martial arts were far inferior to yours. How did he teach you such martial arts? Then, he said in a low voice, could it be that the old beggar Jing spent a lot of effort? Zhang Xiaohu frowned and shook his head slightly. He ignored him and could not explain. Li Jian also frowned and sighed. "Big brother, don't you still have something to say? It's better if you say it all at once." "Okay," Hu Yuni nodded. "Didn't Zhang Xiaohu say it just now?" Shui Tian is the direct disciple of the original Misty School's Big Dipper Master, Zhang Chengyue. His status is more honorable than his. Obviously, he recognizes the importance of the Misty School's Big Dipper Master. That's natural. Big Dipper Master Zhang used to be our Misty School's Big Dipper Master. I've already explained this to Big Brother. It's a pity. How can Zhang Xiaohu compare to Zhang Chengyue's Big Dipper Master? This Big Dipper Master is not the same Big Dipper Master. Big brother, what do you mean by that? Li Jian was a little displeased. Even though the incense cult was the one who first proposed Zhang Xiaohu's identity as the chief disciple, they later asked for the opinions of our little brother and Ahai. They even got the approval of all the Misty School's disciples on Shirxin Peak. What's the difference? However, after saying that, Li Jian's expression changed slightly, as if he had thought of something. Ha, second brother, do you understand what Big Brother means? AI, Big Brother, our Misty School has changed a lot. Even if we want Shui Tian to be the chief disciple of the Misty School, he still can't take out the chief disciple medallion. The waist token of the chief disciple? The middle Misty School's disciples in the square were all surprised. Many of them did not know about this, and they could not help but discuss it. Silence. Li Jian was furious. The chief disciple's waist token was known only to the direct disciples. Very few people in the sect knew about it. Now that Hu Yuni had spoken about it in front of everyone, it was clear that Hu Yuni was determined to prevent Zhang Xiaohu from becoming the Grand Clan leader. When everyone heard Li Jian's anger, they all fell silent. However, Hu Yuni smiled and said, Shui Tian is the only direct disciple of the chief disciple, Zhang Chengyue. If he were to become the chief disciple of our Misty School, it would be perfectly justifiable. Even if he did not have the legacy waist token, he would still be recognized. However, Zhang Xiaohu is different. His master is one high, and he is not the chief disciple. If he wants to be the chief disciple, he has to take out the legacy waste token of the chief disciple. Only then can he truly be the chief disciple or the grand clan leader. Just based on the so-called fake waste token of the fragrance cult, he will never be the real grand clan leader of our Misty school. Big brother, Li Jin was really angry. He shouted, I did not want to embarrass you in front of everyone, but our Misty school suffered such a disaster. It is already a blessing that our disciples were able to return safely to Misty Mountain Villa. Our Misty Mountain Villa has a lot of things to do. The library, the pharmacy, and so on need to be rebuilt. We have not even seen the legacy waste token of that Lao Zi. How do you expect us to find it? From what Big Brother is saying, without the legacy waste token, only that little boy Shui Tian can become the grand clan leader of our Misty school. Even if other people have the best martial arts in the world, they will not be able to become the grand clan leader of our Misty school. Hu Yuni's expression changed slightly. However, he gritted his teeth and nodded slightly. Of course they can. However, this way, they will not be the direct disciples of our Misty school. This Misty school will not be the original Misty school. Ha ha ha, that's good. Li Jin laughed angrily. Big brother, then you can take your time to find your legacy waste token. You can take your time to support your legitimate Misty sect. I'm not going to play with you anymore. I'm going to rebuild a Misty sect with Sect Master Zhang, which is not a direct descendant of Misty sect. Second brother, if you insist, Big brother cannot stop you. Big brother does not wish for the Misty school left by fourth brother to fall into the hands of evil people. Hu Yuni's eyes were a little blurred. He muttered, that day, fourth brother handed over the young Eagle Hall disciple to me. He died in the Misty Peak in front of the Fragrance Cult, the Dalan Temple, and the Righteous Alliance. How can I be at ease with his legacy? At this moment, Zhang Xiaohu's heart skipped a beat. He said loudly, elderly, who said that our branch is going to build a Misty school that is not the direct disciples of the Misty school? If we are talking about legacies, our Misty school is the true immortal Tao legacy. Li Jin asked curiously, Grand Clan Leader Zhang, what do you mean? Zhang Xiaohu said in a low voice, I would like to trouble Grandmaster Hu. What does the legacy waste token of our Misty school's chief disciple look like? Hu Yuni said with some disdain, you don't even know what the legacy waste token looks like. How can you talk about being a direct disciple? Li Jin snorted and said, back then, Master didn't let me see any legacy waste token, but I am still Master's direct disciple. Seeing that Li Jin had misunderstood, Hu Yuni sighed and said, this legacy waste token of the chief disciple is an item of my Misty school's immortal Tao legacy. Back then, I was the one who kept it, but later on, I gave the position of Grand Clan Leader to fourth brother, so I transferred it to him. This waste token is only known to me, fourth brother, and Zhang Qingyue. After saying that, he whispered what the legacy waste token looked like. Zhang Xiaohu was enlightened. Then, he looked as if he had expected it. He reached out and took out the waste token that Zhang Xiaohua gave him. He said with a smile, Grandmaster Hu, look at this. Is this the waste token of the chief disciple that you mentioned? Hu Yuni's eyes lit up. He stretched out his hand and snatched it away. After carefully looking at it, his expression dimmed. He snorted and said, that old beggar Jingyi actually gave this to you. Looks like she's planning far ahead. When Li Jin saw this, he knew that the waste token that Zhang Xiaohu took out was the chief disciple's waste token. He couldn't help but be stunned, but then he smiled and said, Big brother, Grand Clan Leader Zhang also obtained this waste token. It's the heavens that bless my Misty school. Who else but him can take the position of Grand Clan Leader? Hu Yuni was at a loss for words. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with this, he heard Zhang Xiaohu say, Elder Hu, please return this waste token to me. You're from the Fragrance sect. This waste token is my Misty school's immortal Tao legacy. How can you take it? Zhang Xiaohu was furious. He waved his hand and used the telekinesis technique that Zhang Xiaohua taught him. An invisible string seemed to tug at the waste token. In an instant, The waste token was snatched from Hu Yuni's hand and flew back to Zhang Xiaohu's hand. Dragon controlling hand? Hu Yuni cried out in panic. He didn't care that his meridians couldn't circulate his qi and used it to execute the misty school. But just as he stood up, his chest heaved violently. With a pube sound, he spat out a large mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. Big brother. Li Jian couldn't care about anything else. He went forward to support Hu Yuni. Blood was flowing from the corner of Hu Yuni's mouth, and his face was pale gold. Please vote monthly. Please vote recommendation. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 11:26. However, without waiting for Li Jian to steady him, Hu Yuni stood up with difficulty and pushed Li Jian away. Without wiping the blood from his mouth, he stared straight at Zhang Xiaohu and said fiercely, Zhang Xiaohu, what grudge does my misty school have with you that you would use this kind of method to destroy my descendants? Zhang Xiaohu held the token in his hand and coldly snorted, Elder Hu, you're putting too much on me. I only became the leader of the misty school and you're already so disgusted with me? Only by pushing Shui Tiantian, who is under your wing, to the position of leader will you be able to feel at ease? It doesn't matter who becomes the sect master. You forcefully took my ethereal sect's legacy token. That's not allowed. If you don't return the legacy token to my ethereal sect, I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohu laughed and pointed at Shui Tiantian. Only Zhang Qingyue's disciple is a disciple of the Misty School. Isn't Wen Wenhai's disciple also a disciple of the Misty School? Only Elder Hu's disciple is a disciple of the Misty School. Isn't Elder Li's disciple also a disciple of the Misty School? Then, looking at the token in his hand, he tossed it up and down and said, As for this legacy token, to be honest, even I didn't know it was the token of our Misty School's chief disciple. I just thought it was a normal token. Moreover, this was given to me by a senior who has a deep relationship with our Misty School. He didn't explain how to use it, so it has nothing to do with the incense cult that Elder Hu is talking about. Hu Yuni sneered, You keep talking about that senior, but I've never seen him. When the Misty School was destroyed, that senior didn't even show his face. Why is it that when it comes to you, he always comes out? Zhang Xiaohu, don't try to scare me. This is all that old beggar Jingyi's evil plan. Don't you think so? Zhang Xiaohu really didn't know how to convince this Elder Hu was dead set on believing that he was a spy for the cult of incense. He could only hide the inheritance token on his body again. He took out the jade water sword and placed it in the palm of his left hand. Then, he forcefully formed a seal with his right hand and channeled a meager amount of qi into the seal. When the seal gradually took shape, Zhang Xiaohu's index and middle fingers joined together and pointed at the jade water sword in his left hand. The jade water sword wobbled into the air and stopped in midair. Then, Zhang Xiaohu silently circulated his qi, and the seal in his hand moved slightly. The flying sword in midair seemed to be waved by someone. Following the changes in the seal in Zhang Xiaohu's hand, the 7 ethereal swords were displayed one by one. Flying sword? Li Jian looked at the jade water sword in the air and couldn't help but cry out in shock. This was his lifelong pursuit, and it was also the supreme realm of the way of the sword. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, how could he not be surprised? The Misty School disciples around the square were even more surprised. Their mouths were wide open as they stared blankly. Even after Zhang Xiaohu exhausted all the qi in his meridians and forcefully put away the jade water sword, their mouths still hadn't closed. Shui Yuping's expression was even more peculiar. She first rubbed her eyes, then pinched her own thigh. Her eyes were first filled with envy, then jealousy. She then stared at the place where Zhang Xiaohu hid the legacy token, unwilling to look away for a long time. Hu Yuni was different. He was first delighted, then his face turned ashen as he muttered, The heavens are destroying my Misty School. The heavens are destroying my Misty School. Zhang Xiaohu was right beside Hu Yuni. When he heard this, he couldn't help but be so angry that his nose was about to become crooked. He cupped his hands and said, Elder Hu, let me remind you again. I am a direct disciple of the Misty School, and now I have also received the legacy of the Misty School. Therefore, I am the legitimate disciple of the Misty School. From today onwards, Martial Uncle Zhang Chengyue's branch is no longer what you call legitimate. Hu Yuni sat on the ground and shook his head weakly. I don't know where you learned the technique of passing on the incense sect. You actually pretended to be a disciple of the Misty School. Zhang Xiaohu couldn't be bothered to speak to Hu Yuni at that moment. He surveyed the surrounding disciples and said loudly, "Disciples, what I just revealed is the sword art of our ethereal sect's immortal Tao. Moreover, I also did as Elder Hu requested. Not only did I compete with Deputy Gang Leader Shui in sword technique, I also took out the token of the Incense Sect's chief disciple. If that still can't win Elder Hu's trust, then I don't know how to win his trust." However, Elder Hu is right. The Misty School is not a place where one person has the final say. Winning the trust of one person is not important. As long as I can win the trust of all of you, that's enough. Therefore, as for who is the legitimate disciple of the Misty School, you can decide for yourselves. Alright, let's end this farce here. All of you, disperse. The disciples of the Misty School should do what they should do. Don't be affected by this matter. Yes, big gang leader. The disciples were full of courage and they all spoke in unison. Soon after, they slowly dispersed, leaving only the 2,000 disciples that Elder Hu had brought back. They separated themselves from the young Eagle Hall disciples and quietly stood at the side of the plaza. Zhang Xiaohu glanced at them and said in a low voice, "Elderly, you, go and see." The one who accompanied Elder Hu. I really don't know how to persuade him. Sigh. Elder Hu was also worried about the inheritance of the Misty School, but I don't know why he walked into a dead end. Li Jian said and saluted again. Congratulations, big gang leader. Your martial arts have improved greatly, and now you even have the cultivation of the immortal path. It's really the great fortune of the Misty School. Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile, I don't dare to accept such praise. I was just lucky to have learned a little bit. I've made a fool of myself in front of Elderly. Then he said, I'll leave this to Elderly. I'll go back to the meeting hall first. Yes, big gang leader. I'll definitely take care of it. After Zhang Xiaohu turned and left, Li Jian looked at Zhang Xiaohu's tall and straight back and shook his head slightly. He felt that the Zhang Xiaohu in front of him was becoming more and more mysterious and unfathomable. Unknowingly, more than 10 days passed. After the incident in the square, the Misty School disciples respected Zhang Xiaohu even more. The cohesion of the Misty School was unprecedentedly great. And Hu Yuni didn't do what Zhang Xiaohu thought. He didn't see the 2,000 disciples pull him out, stand alone on the mountain, and listen to Li Jian's occasional reports. It seemed that he was also hesitating. Oh? When Zhang Xiaohu was sitting on the chair in the meeting hall and worrying about Hu Yuni's matter, he suddenly heard Zhang Xiaohua's voice behind him. Second brother, you're actually sitting on the big gang leader's chair. It seems that Shui Yuping was defeated by you. Congratulations. Sigh. What's there to be happy about? Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. You don't know the situation now. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. She asked curiously, you won the martial arts competition, right? What can't you solve? Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly and told her what happened that day. In the end, he added, Elder Hu is the most senior and oldest elder in the Misty School. He has worked hard for the Misty School his whole life. Although he has a problem with me, he's also very attached to the Misty School. I couldn't bear to punish him and wanted him to stay, but now it seems that they're most likely going to leave. That stubborn old man. Zhang Xiaohua flicked her sleeves and said, if he's going to leave, then so be it. Otherwise, he'll mess things up. That's easy for you to say. There are still 2,000 disciples of the Misty School. If he leaves, won't he take all of them with him? From what you said, Shui Yuping is a disciple of the Righteous Alliance. Won't my 2,000 disciples benefit the Righteous Alliance? No matter what you say, that won't do. What do you want to do then? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. Sigh, there's no other way. That's why I'm worried. Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. Oh, by the way, Xiaohua, are you here because the last batch of soul-absorbing pills has been completed? Yes, that's right. It's in the secret passage. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and then realized something. Second brother, are you going to use the soul-absorbing pills to control these 2,000 Misty School disciples? No need. Zhang Xiaohu shook his head. The soul-absorbing pills are harmful to nature. If I can avoid using them, of course I won't. Moreover, they are the disciples of the Misty School. They are my brothers. I can't use the soul-absorbing pills on them. Oh, second brother, that's a good idea. I support you. Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands. At this time, a disciple reported outside that the leaders of the drill hall and the great martial hall wanted to see him. You go back to the secret passage first. I'll see what they want. Zhang Xiaohu asked Zhang Xiaohua to enter the secret passage before letting Wang Luan and Lu Bin in. When they saw Zhang Xiaohu, they bowed and said, Faction leader Zhang, we have something important to report to you. Well, please take a seat. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and asked them to take a seat. Then he asked, what's the important thing? Wang Luan looked at Lu Bin and said, Faction leader, Shui Yuping came to the drill hall last night with a token from the Righteous Alliance's vice leader Yu. He asked us to lead our disciples to follow his orders. Lu Bin chimed in, Big faction leader, I'm in the same situation as clan leader Wang. I was chased into the great martial hall by Shui Yuping. He has the token of the Righteous Alliance and wants me to listen to his orders. Zhang Xiaohu squinted his eyes and asked calmly, what did Shui Yuping want you to do? Wang Luan and Lu Bin looked at each other and shook their heads. Wang Luan said, Shui Yuping didn't say anything. He just showed us the token and asked us to follow his orders. Hee, how did you answer? Zhang Xiaohu laughed. Faction leader, of course we went with the flow. We just said that we would follow his orders. Well done. I already know. You can go now. If there's anything else, report to me immediately. Yes, we'll follow Grand Faction Master's orders. The two men bowed respectfully, then turned around and left. When Zhang Xiaohua came out from the secret room, Zhang Xiaohu said with a bitter smile, Look, the person beside Elder who is the one who is going to overturn the Misty School. He didn't even know what's right or wrong and put the blame on me. I really want to wake him up with a punch and show him who's the real master of the Misty School. Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes and came up with an idea. She whispered something in Zhang Xiaohu's ear. Zhang Xiaohu's face lit up and said, This is really feasible. It's a complete cultivation story. The ending of the story should be that Zhang Xiaohua becomes a god. But the new book needs your support. Xiaohua also needs your support. The process of an ordinary person becoming a saint is too big in the book review section. I posted a sticky post. Everyone, please leave your footprints. This post will be stuck at the top forever. Thank you everyone. -4. Chapter 11:27. The last old man opened his eyes and said coldly, The Dalan temples Yuantian, Yuandao, Yuanming, and Yuanwu were famous in Jianghu back then. They were the famous four protectors of the Dalan temple. For the sake of passing down the Shundao sect, the three of us didn't dare to show our faces in public. How could we have any reputation? Even if we stood in front of the people of Jianghu, no one would know. Haha, Taoist Hao Feng's words raise the prestige of others and destroy our own morale. Bai Yinqiu smiled like a flower and said, If Taoist Hao Feng says that you are the mysterious cultivator who seriously injured the Dalan temple's master Yuanta, then who in Jianghu wouldn't know? Hearing this, Taoist Hao Feng's face also showed a smug expression. Seriously injuring the abbot of the Dalan temple and then killing him was one of the earth-shattering things that Taoist Hao Feng had done in his early years. He could not help but feel proud. It can't be that much. Grandmaster Yuantian's cultivation was very high. Back then, it was only because he underestimated his opponent that this old man took advantage of him. Although Yuantian died, this old man was also injured. It will take several years of recuperation for me to fully recover. Taoist Hao Feng is too modest. When our sect destroys this immortal mansion, our name will shake the world and we will command the Jianghu. That will be the day you can hold your head high. The world belongs to you young people. What hope do we old people have? If it weren't for the importance of this matter, why would we be willing to come out? Taoist Hao Feng waved his hand and thought for a moment before asking, In this Jianghu assembly, Did you see Abbess Shuqing and Abbess Shujia? Bai Yanqiu's face showed surprise again, but then he covered his mouth with his hand and sighed. I heard that the two elders of the incense cult died a long time ago. Could it be that they are like the Dalan Temple's master Yuan Dao and the others, that they also live in seclusion and cultivate? By Zhangmin. Although you have stepped into the path of immortality, the path of immortality is far from what you can imagine with your current cultivation. The immortal Dao was different from the martial Dao. It could only temper one's inner strength and increase one's cultivation. One could flaunt one's bravery in the pugilistic world and be in the limelight for a period of time. When one cultivates the immortal Dao to a high level, not only can one overturn rivers and seas with a raise of one's hand, one can even prolong one's lifespan. Then, wouldn't they all become immortals? Bai Yanqiu was somewhat disdainful, but his face was still respectful. If what how you said is true, then where did the people of the Tao of immortality go? Sigh. The world has changed and vital energy has been annihilated. We cultivators of the immortal Tao have lost the foundation of our existence. How can we live forever? Taoist Master Hao Yu sighed and said, what I just said is only the phenomenon of the cultivation of the Tao of immortality reaching the pinnacle. But even our Shindao sect's founder, Wan Wuxin, did not reach such a realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had to use a primordial spirit projection to pass down his Tao teachings. What level is the primordial spirit projection at? Bai Yanqiu asked curiously. I don't know. Taoist Master Hao Yu shook his head. Perhaps it wasn't the pinnacle of the realm in ancient times, but now, it's already the cultivation of an immortal. Then, as one's cultivation of the Tao of immortality deepens, will one's lifespan also increase? Bai Yanqiu probed. Exactly. But how can an ordinary cultivation have such an effect? That's why my fellow disciples, the 3 monks of the Dalan Temple, and Shu Qing and Shu Jia of the incense sect all meditate and cultivate, hoping to further break through the realm and prolong our lifespan in one fell swoop. Io, 3 Taoists, this disciple, has disturbed your cultivation. I hope you can forgive me. Bai Yanqiu hurriedly got up and bowed. Hee, it's fine, it's fine. Taoist Master Hao Yu waved his hand and said, the immortal mansion is a matter of great importance. Even if you didn't say anything, we would have left the mountain. What do you mean? Bai Yanqiu asked curiously. The immortal mansion. Who knows what's inside? How can we not be curious about something that even ancestral Master Huan covets? Even if we can't take back the immortal mansion and make it the foundation of our Shandao sect's inheritance, as long as we can obtain the ancient Tao of immortality pills inside, we might be able to break through our current bottleneck and advance our cultivation to the next level. Your lifespan will certainly increase along with it. Correct. Taoist Master Hao Yu continued. If there's some kind of immortal pill that can prolong one's lifespan, we only need one. Wouldn't all our problems be solved? Life-prolonging pill? Bai Yanqiu exclaimed. Does the immortal mansion really have such a legendary pill? Maybe, maybe not. But as long as there's a chance, who would give it up? Taoist Master Hao Yu laughed. That's right. Taoist Master is right. Bai Yanqiu's face flushed red. He raised his head and asked, Li, what about the Righteous Alliance and incense cult's actions? Li Su was listening to Bai Yanqiu and the 3 Taoist masters talking. He didn't expect to be suddenly asked, as if he didn't hear anything. Not only Li Su, but even Liang Cangshu and the others were intoxicated. It was as if the legendary thing was about to happen to them. Li? Bai Yanqiu asked discontentedly. I'm asking you. Oh, sect leader. Li Su came to his senses and hurriedly replied. What I heard was really unimaginable. I've learned a lot. Please forgive me, sect leader. Haha, it's all right. Not only you, but even I was enlightened after hearing Taoist Master's words. I know the importance of the immortal mansion this time. Fortunately, I had the primordial spirit projection of Ancestor Huan to remind me between the clouds and the water, so I got a head start. The chances of getting the immortal mansion or entering the immortal mansion in advance have greatly increased. When the time comes, as long as there are benefits, all of you will be my disciples between the clouds and the water. How can you be left out? Thank you. Sect leader. Li Su and the others were overjoyed. They bowed and thanked him. No need. Li, what about the incense cult and the Righteous Alliance? Sect leader, the Righteous Alliance came a little late. They set up camp on the west side of Yao Mountain. There are about 200 disciples now. Hee. I heard that the several thousand disciples of the Righteous Alliance who stayed at Misty Peak were all captured by the disciples of the Misty School. None of them escaped. Zhang San suffered such a big loss at the hands of the incense cult. It's strange that he didn't look for trouble with the incense cult or the Misty School. Sect leader, if it weren't for the Immortal Mansion, I'm afraid Zhang San of the Righteous Alliance would have flipped out long ago. However, the several thousand disciples didn't lose their martial arts or their lives. Zhang San only needs to spare some time in the future to kill them. Isn't he afraid that the Misty School's Zhang Xiaohu won't hand over the several thousand disciples? Li Su laughed. Li is right. The Misty School has taken advantage of the Immortal Mansion. Bai Yinqiu nodded. Oh right, what about the Misty School? Didn't they come to Yaoshan with the incense cult? According to the disciples' report, everything in Misty Peak is normal. However, about 10 days ago, the exiled Hu Yuni brought another group of disciples of the Misty School back. I think the disciples of the Misty School are now racking their brains over who should be the leader of the Misty School. Hee, that's right. In Misty Peak, the disciples of the Misty School led by Zhang Xiaohu, the disciples of the Misty School led by Hu Yuni, and the disciples of the incense cult led by Ming Qing. There are also several thousand disciples of the Righteous Alliance who were captured. These people are in a mess. How can they spare the effort to come to Yaoshan? Perhaps only when the incense cult's abbess Jing graces them with her presence can they completely suppress them. Not necessarily. Abbess Jingyi said that she wouldn't care about the Misty School anymore. If she interferes, she'll be exposed. In Jianghu, there are many cases of men stealing and women prostituting. Abbess Jingyi is just burying her head in the sand. Who doesn't know this? Sect leader is wise and far-sighted. I think the Misty School is also under Abbess Jingyi's orders. That's why they're biding their time. Who cares? If they don't come, it's because there are fewer opponents. They can't be called opponents. They're just troublesome. Bai Yinqiu waved his hand as if he was shooing away an annoying fly. Then, he smiled apologetically at the three immortals and asked, "Please enlighten me. The two abbesses of the incense cult, Shu Qing and Shu Jia, what are their cultivations?" This was the question that Bai Yinqiu was most concerned about. Taoist Hao Yun and the other two looked at each other and shook their heads. The incense cult hides from the world, and Shu Qing and Shu Jia are both older than us. They also entered the path of immortality earlier. Their current cultivation. If there's no accident, they should be above us. It's just that they haven't broken through the bottleneck, so they're all qi refinement cultivations. There's no essential difference. Bai Yinqiu frowned slightly. Just as he was about to speak, a divine sense descended from the sky like a waterfall and swept past the tent where Bai Yinqiu and the others were in. Sakura? Taoist Hao Yun frowned and asked curiously, Tenryu's sect. How did they come so quickly? However, the divine sense seemed to have sensed something and immediately swept back. It actually scanned the bodies of Taoist Hao Yun and the other two several times. You're going too far. Taoist Hao Yun was furious. Even if you're the most powerful person in the world, you can't do this. No, Taoist Hao Yun, this isn't Sakura. Bai Yinqiu suddenly shouted. Disciple has seen Sakura's divine sense in the incense cult. It didn't seem to be this strong. A nameless immortal expert? The four people looked at each other, their eyes full of astonishment. Their figures rose into the air and flew straight out of the tent. Zhang Xiaohua left the Misty Mountain Villa. She originally wanted to go south and look for Chu Jing along the way to the Dragon Mountain. However, after flying for a while, she felt somewhat reluctant. Reluctant about what? Needless to say, it was the Immortal Mansion on Yao Mountain. This was the Beidou School's foundation that Zhang Xiaohua had long identified. She wanted to put the Immortal Mansion into her pocket before between the clouds and the water. However, after careful consideration, she knew that this Immortal Mansion wasn't something she could swallow in one go. How could her heart be at ease? She unconsciously changed her mind and turned around to fly to the west. Far away from Yao Mountain, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense saw Lu Town, Bao Town, Pingyao Town, Nanyang Town, Nanzhao Town, and so on. They were all filled with Jianghu people. Every street and alley was filled with people holding shining swords and spears. Ordinary people all closed their doors and peeked outside. No one dared to go out easily. Sigh. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but scratch her head. -4. Chapter 11:28. At night, the moon was dark and the wind was strong. The whimpering autumn wind blew through the withered branches of the misty mountain villa. The branches trembled violently in the dark night. With a kacha sound, a slightly thinner branch was broken by the wind and fell to the ground. In just a moment, 2 figures fell from the sky and landed under the big tree. They were the 2 disciples of the Misty School who were on duty. Both of them held long swords and looked around vigilantly. One of them even jumped to the top of the tree and looked around. Seeing that there was no abnormality, he jumped down. The other person looked around the big tree carefully. When that person came down, he whispered, "Did you see anything unusual?" That person shook his head. "No, there is no trace of anything unusual." "Well, there is no suspicious trace under the tree. Perhaps it is a fallen branch." That disciple pointed to the branch that was blown to the side by the wind and said, "Senior brother, what you said is reasonable. At this time, the wind is strong. It is normal for the branch to be blown off. Go to the side to patrol. Now is the critical time for our Misty School. We can't let other disciples enter easily." "Yes, senior brother." That disciple nodded and was about to leave. However, he hesitated and asked, "Senior brother, I have something to ask. Although I know it is not appropriate to say it, if I don't say it, it is really uncomfortable." "Junior brother Luan, if you have something to say, just say it. I have watched you grow up. You are almost like a brother to me. If you have something to say, who else can you say it to?" "Well, senior brother, then I will take the liberty to ask." Junior brother Luan turned his head and looked at the ethereal mountain villa in the dark night. He whispered, "Alas, when I see the familiar ethereal mountain villa, even though it is a little shabby, my heart feels warm. It is much more comfortable than the ethereal hall on the Serene Peak, which is much more luxurious." "Hee, isn't it?" Junior brother Luan and the others went to the Misty Hall in the front mountain of the Serene Peak. We were in the wilderness behind the Serene Peak. The feeling of returning to the misty mountain villa is more emotional than you. After speaking, that senior brother looked at junior brother Luan with a smile that was not a smile. Junior brother wouldn't want to tell senior brother about reminiscing about the past and reminiscing about the past, right? "It's nothing, senior brother Lu. Actually, what I want to ask is very simple. Think about how our Misty School has gone through so many trials and tribulations. Senior brother Lu and the others had their martial arts crippled before sect leader Zhang rescued them and allowed them to recover. Now, our Misty School's disciples are all gathered together, and sect leader Zhang has even recruited the disciples of the incense cult and the alliance of righteous sects under his wing. This situation is unprecedented. It can't be because of Grandmaster Hu's obstruction. Is it going to fall apart? Was it going to be destroyed in a day? Whenever I think about it, I feel suffocated." Senior brother Lu looked at junior brother Luan with a gratified smile and said, "To be honest, there are too many things that I don't know and I can't say. However, before martial ancestor Hu came, what was the situation in my Misty School? Of course it's getting better every day. Sect Master Zhang is a wise and brilliant man who has managed to unify the entire Misty sect flawlessly. Yes, then what about Grandmaster Hu after he leaves?" Senior brother Lu means Grandmaster Hu is going to leave? Sect leader Zhang is still the sect leader? Junior brother Luan was somewhat confused. But Grandmaster Hu is a founding member of my Misty School. If he leaves, then Grandmaster Li and the others will also leave? Moreover, aren't many of the Misty School's disciples going to leave? Junior brother Luan, let me ask you, if you were to choose, who would you choose? Is there even a need to ask? On Serene Peak, I went through hardships with sect leader Zhang. Now that I'm here, how can I abandon him and leave? Moreover, Sect leader Zhang received the inheritance of my Misty School and has the Immortal Tao inheritance token. He also has the cultivation of the Immortal Tao. He is the orthodox disciple of my Misty School. How can I choose someone else? Moreover, if Grandmaster who establishes another faction, Shui Yuping will definitely be the sect leader. Although he is the deputy sect leader of my Misty School, he is still the sect leader of the Luo Shui gang. If I go, I may become a disciple of the Luo Shui gang in the future. Why would I be looking for trouble for no reason? Ha ha ha. Senior brother Lu patted junior brother Luan's shoulder and laughed. You know how to choose. Don't others know? Moreover, Grandmaster Li has already made it clear that he only recognizes sect leader Zhang. He doesn't recognize anyone else. If Grandmaster Li doesn't leave, will others leave? Hee, that's true. Those who want to leave are those who have just arrived. At most, the Misty School is no different from before Grandmaster who came. Junior brother Luan said mysteriously. Senior brother Lu, I'll ask one more question. Your martial arts, were you really saved by sect leader Zhang? Hearing junior brother Luan's doubts, senior brother Lu's expression changed. He stopped smiling and said, This question is quite inappropriate. How can sect leader Zhang doubt our grace? But then, he waved his hand and said, Alas, I don't blame you. You and the others only live in the front mountain freely. How can you know our misery? Seeing senior brother Lu angry, junior brother Luan immediately smiled apologetically and said, I won't hide it from senior brother Lu. I've been with sect leader Zhang at Shixin Peak for several years, but I've never seen anything special about him. Even his martial arts have always been below mine. It's extremely inconsistent with his status as a direct disciple. Even when he received Abbess Jingyi's recognition and became the chief disciple of Misty Hall, he still followed the rules and didn't have the slightest flaw. But how could he do such an earth-shattering thing behind the backs of the disciples who spent all day with us and the disciples of Incense Cult? My goodness, senior brother Lu, I'm afraid there are more than 1,000 of you. Sect leader Zhang even restored your martial arts. This is a divine ability that only immortals have. I really don't dare to believe it. Haha, what's there to not believe? Didn't you see sect leader Zhang's flying sword? Although it can't compare to the legends, but Grand Gang leader Zhang is already a cultivator of the Tao of immortality. Restoring our martial arts should be a simple matter. Senior brother Lu said, and looked in the direction of the meeting hall. After a while, he said, I, Lu, will never forget sect leader Zhang's grace. Don't listen to Elder Hu's nonsense. Even if Elder Hu stays and sect leader Zhang establishes another Misty School, I, Lu, will definitely follow sect leader Zhang. I, Lu, will use my life to repay sect leader Zhang's kindness. That's right, Elder Hu. Alas, Elder Hu's body is failing. Although Tian is Martial Uncle Zhang's disciple, she's still young. Elder Hu's branch. The future is bleak, the two whispered, but their bodies did not stop. Two pairs of eyes looked around and gradually walked away. When they were far away, in the shadow of a big tree not far away, there was a slight movement. A tall and thin figure slowly appeared. This person was wearing black night clothes and his face was covered with a black cloth. He held a long sword in his hand. His bright eyes stared at the backs of the two for a long time, then he sighed slightly. Immediately, he stood up, identified the direction, and used his Qing Gong to go. That person did not walk towards the Misty Mountain Villa. Instead, he walked out of the villa and went all the way south. He passed by two small villages and arrived in front of a short earth temple. That person jumped onto the earth temple and looked around. Then, as if he was not at ease, he surrounded the earth temple. He walked around the area with a radius of hundreds of feet. Then, he stopped and walked slowly to the front of the earth temple. He sat down cross-legged with his palms facing the sky and started to meditate. After an unknown period of time, a figure wearing a green robe suddenly appeared 10 feet in front of the earth temple. Then, the figure fluttered to the front of that person and landed gently. He said, Gang leader Shui, you're really early. The person who came early did not seem to expect that someone would suddenly appear and speak. When he opened his eyes in surprise, the long sword in his hand was pulled out. Seeing that the person in front of him was so alert, the man in the green robe smiled and said, "Shui Yuping, it's me. I'm the one who called you out." "Leader Wu?" The masked person saw the bronze mask on the face of the man in the green robe and blurted out, "Hee hee, gang leader Shui is really forgetful. Not long ago, we parted at the Evil Tiger Mountain Villa. Don't you know that my surname is Jiang? I wouldn't dare. Although I've never seen your face, I've heard of your name in the pugilistic world. I wonder, how should I address you?" "Ha ha ha, Shui Yuping, you're really careful. Didn't I use the secret code that you and Vice Alliance leader you agreed on that piece of paper? You're still suspicious of me." The man in the green robe took off his bronze mask and revealed his real face. "If that's the case, then gang leader Shui should just call me Vice Alliance leader Jiang. Forgive me, Vice Alliance leader Wu." The masked man took out a match from his bosom and lit it up to take a look. Only then did he feel relieved. He also took off his own black cloth, revealing Shui Yuping's face. Then, Shui Yuping covered her face with the black cloth, and the man in the green robe put on his bronze mask. "Vice Alliance leader Jiang, what's so important that you've called me out in such a hurry?" "Of course there's something important. Otherwise, how could I come out so easily?" The man in the green robe said proudly, "I heard that Hu Yuni was humiliated at Ethereal Heights, and the disciples of Misty School didn't take him seriously. Our plan to make you the leader of Misty School has been seriously hindered." "Gang leader Jiang, I really admire you. You've gotten this information so quickly." Shui Yuping cupped her hands in salute. "Hee hee, that's what the blue flame token is for anyway. There's nothing special about it. But gang leader Jiang's information is a little outdated." Is there some good news? I've already used Vice Alliance leader Yu's token to contact the leaders of the 2 halls of the Righteous Alliance in Misty School. More than 5,000 people from the 2 halls have agreed to listen to my orders. Hee hee, I know about this. This is Alliance leader Zhang's secret move in Misty School. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please bookmark, please tip, thank you. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote recommendation and monthly at Chidian. Com. -4. Chapter 1129. This secret weapon was left behind by Alliance Master Zhang, and now it's being used by you. What kind of good news is that? The green-robed man said disdainfully. I want to control these 5,000 men and turn the Misty School into a puddle of chaotic water. Only then can I take advantage of the chaos and obtain the position of gang leader of the Misty School. Fine, fine. If you do this, when will you be able to get the Misty School into the pockets of the Righteous Alliance? I'm afraid that Abishjing, you would have noticed it long ago. Don't forget, Misty Sect still has thousands of disciples from Incense Cult. I hope Commander Jiang can tell Vice Alliance Master Yu that this is the only path I can take. Shui Yuping said with a bit of shame. No need. When I received the news that the Misty School had returned to the Misty Mountain Villa, I sent the news back to the Righteous Alliance and also reported the situation you might encounter to Alliance Master Zhang. Alliance Master Zhang has already passed down the order through Vice Alliance Master Yu. Otherwise, why would I ask you to come out? Yes, I'm stupid. When I met Commander Jiang that day, I didn't expect that the Misty School disciples could return to the Misty Mountain Villa. Although the orders I received later gradually changed, I couldn't keep up with the changes, so I'm a bit stretched. I just don't know. What is Alliance Master Zhang's plan this time? Hee hee, what else can it be? The green-robed man took out something and threw it to Shui Yuping. Shui Yuping caught it. It was a jade bottle. She couldn't help but ask curiously, "This is..." But then, her face changed and she said anxiously, "Could it be?" "Yes, gang leader Shui, this is the poison." The green-robed man said with a smile, "However, it's different from the slow-acting poison I gave you to Hu Yuni last time. This time, it's highly toxic. Once it enters the mouth, the poison will take effect instantly and there's no time to save it. Gang leader Shui, you just need to find a chance to let Hu Yuni from the Misty School. Oh, he doesn't need to. You just need to let Li Jian, Hu Yuni, Zhang Xiaohu, Wenhai and the others take it. Then, the position of gang leader of the Misty School will be yours, right?" Shui Yuping heard this and hesitated. The poison is very effective, but the others are also very vigilant. It's very difficult to succeed. Last time, when Vice Alliance leader you gave me the poison, I thought of all sorts of methods. In the end, I could only feed it to Hu Yuni through a child. This time, before he finished speaking, the green-robed man suddenly, the green-robed man suddenly, the green-robed man was a light was it? Just as the green-robed man finished speaking, the surroundings suddenly lit up. When the green-robed man saw this, he didn't say anything else. His body remained in the same posture as he suddenly jumped up and threw himself diagonally towards a place where the lights were not yet lit up. Since you're here, do you still want to leave? A voice sounded. It was Zhang Xiaohu. He moved his sword and a light flashed as he chased after the green-robed man. Behind Zhang Xiaohu, Shui Yuping was surrounded by bright lights. Hu Yuni, Li Jin, Lu Qingyang, and the others were all in sight. In front of Hu Yuni, there was a person with tears on her face and an expression of disbelief. Shui Tian'an. Father, is this really you? Shui Tian didn't wait for the green-robed man to come closer and asked. Shui Yuping, who was wearing black clothes and had a black cloth covering her face, panicked at first. She quickly looked around and saw that the green-robed man was already lit up. There was no place for her to escape. When Shui Tian asked, Shui Yuping had already calmed down. Looking at the disappointed Shui Tian, she stood quietly and didn't say a word. Father, do you know? How much effort did the great grandmaster put in to teach the boy martial arts? For the boy to gain a foothold in the Misty School, the great grandmaster was willing to offend the second grandmaster and gang leader Zhang. For the boy's future, the great grandmaster was willing to let father be the gang leader instead of him. Why did he do all this? Wasn't it all because of the boy? Even if you came to the Misty School to fight for the position of gang leader, that's fine. You're the deputy gang leader of the Misty School. It's perfectly justified for you to be the gang leader. But why did you poison the great grandmaster? Through the boy's hands. Aren't you trying to frame the boy for being heartless and unjust? What's the difference between this and the boy personally poisoning the great grandmaster? The more Shui Tian spoke, the more tears streamed down his face. He really couldn't associate this person in front of him, who held poison in his hands and wanted to poison the higher-ups of the Misty School, with his father, who was so loving that he couldn't even bear to scold him. Shui Yuping, you heartless thing. As soon as Hu Yuni spoke, he started coughing nonstop. Shui Tian habitually took out a jade bottle from his chest, but just as he was about to pour out the elixir, he immediately realized something. With a disgusted expression, he threw the jade bottle on the ground and smashed it into pieces. Li Jin came over to support Hu Yuni. When he finally stopped coughing, Hu Yuni scolded angrily again. I have always been worried about your wild ambition and that you would harm the Misty School. But when I thought about how you're Tiantian's father, no matter how bad it is, I still have to give Tiantian some face. I was originally the deputy gang leader of the Misty School. Even if I became the gang leader, I would have to pass the position to Tiantian in a few years. It would be considered as restoring the orthodoxy of the Misty School. So, I let you return to the Misty School and even fought against all the disciples of the Misty School for you. You want me to put my face, where should I put it? How can I face the dead fourth brother and master? Hu Yuni spat out a mouthful of blood. Under the light, it actually faintly turned black. He could no longer support himself and collapsed on the ground. Big brother, Li Jin cried out in grief and supported him. You brat, I've long found you an eyesore. If it wasn't for second brother stopping me, I would have chopped you into minced meat long ago. Come, eat my axe. Lu Qingyang bared his fangs and brandished his claws, about to pounce on him. At this moment, a figure flew back from afar. It was Zhang Xiaohu, big gang leader. You're back? Lu Qingyang saw him and unconsciously stopped. Shui Yuping, what else do you have to say? Zhang Xiaohu turned around and reprimanded, Commander Jiang, which is also Vice Alliance leader Jiang. I'm afraid you're Jiang Yin from the Righteous Alliance. Although I only used my sword to seriously injure him, and did not take him down, but your conversation earlier, I heard it all. Why are you wasting time with him? Let me take him down first. Lu Qingyang waved his axe and was about to attack again. Shui Yuping, who had been standing there silently, opened his mouth. He took off the black cloth covering his face, revealing his handsome face. He looked at Shui Tiantian and smiled bitterly. Tiantian, don't blame Daddy. If it wasn't for you, if Daddy didn't love you so much, perhaps Daddy wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Oh, perhaps he would have fallen to such a state long ago. Then, looking at Li Jin and the limp Hu Yuni, Shui Yuping continued, that year, Daddy was accidentally captured by gang leader O of the Misty School. He was going to commit suicide, but he missed you and your mother. Gang leader O also took you and your mother as hostages and wanted me to join the Misty School. Daddy had no choice but to become the deputy gang leader of the Misty School. Of course, the Misty School treated Daddy and you very well. If it wasn't for the Misty School being destroyed, you would have become the gang leader of the Misty School in a few decades. That was Daddy's wish. But the Misty School was destroyed. Daddy and you were both on the run. You still had Elder Hu to protect you, but Daddy was all alone. Although the years of wandering were miserable, Daddy thought, as long as you were in this world, Daddy couldn't give up the chance to live. But unfortunately, the heavens didn't open their eyes and Daddy was captured by the Righteous Alliance. Daddy didn't intend to live, but they used you to threaten Daddy. If Daddy didn't agree to their conditions, they would have killed you first. Daddy knew the Righteous Alliance's methods. Your Misty School only had a few thousand people on the run. Among them, there were also spies from the Righteous Alliance. If they really made a move, how could a little child like you be their match? Daddy had no choice, had no choice but to join the Righteous Alliance. In exchange for your safety, Tian, you can blame Daddy. Blame Daddy for being ruthless, but you can't blame Daddy for not caring about you. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame this bloody Jianghu. Blame that no one has the ability to protect you. Shui Yuping, you poisoned my big brother, and you still don't. Lu Qingyang was furious. Just as he was about to berate Shui Yuping, he was stopped by Zhang Xiaohu. Looking at Shui Yuping's doting gaze towards Shui Tiantian, Zhang Xiaohu fell into deep thought. AI, if you knew this day would come, why did you do it in the first place? If I didn't agree to clan leader O's request, I would have died a few years earlier. Why should I continue to suffer in this world? As he said this, he crushed the jade bottle in his hand and poured the pills into his mouth. However, when the elixir entered his mouth, Shui Yuping was obviously stunned. She immediately looked at Zhang Xiaohu and opened her mouth to say something. However, when she saw Shui Tiantian's expression, she didn't say anything. She just shook her head and said, Tiantian, in the future, Daddy won't exist in this world anymore. You have to be obedient. Listen to sect leader Zhang. Be a true disciple of the Misty School. Daddy. Shui Tiantian couldn't bear it anymore. After running a few steps, he stopped and looked at Hu Yuni. Hu Yuni knew that Shui Yuping had made up her mind. He only had time to wave his hand before he spat out another mouthful of blood and fainted completely. Shui Tiantian's face was filled with joy. However, when he turned around, he heard Shui Yuping's last words. Daddy, I'm sorry. Then, Shui Yuping slapped the top of her head. Immediately, she opened her eyes and looked at Shui Tiantian. Then, she fell to the ground on her back. Daddy! Shui Tiantian cried loudly. He rushed forward and hugged Shui Yuping's body, which was gradually turning cold, and cried bitterly. Behind him, Li Jian also shouted, Big brother. At this moment, blood kept flowing out from the corner of Hu Yuni's mouth. His breathing was also intermittent. It was very weak. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 11:30. Seeing that Hu Yuni was dying, Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, when one high and the others were all sad. Zhang Xiaohu also had mixed feelings. Although Hu Yuni had tried to stop him from becoming the Grand Master of the Misty School, and even suspected that he was a spy of the Cult of Fragrance, It was all for the sake of the Misty School, the successor of the Misty School, and the legacy of O Peng who had died on the Misty Peak. Therefore, putting himself in Hu Yunyi's shoes, Zhang Xiaohu did not resent him too much. Alas, maybe it's because he knows that he's dying and can't last long. So he must find an absolutely reliable grandmaster for the Misty School. Zhang Xiaohu thought. Shui Yuping is also pitiful, being threatened by the alliance of righteous sects. If I didn't have a brother who is so powerful, alas, I'm sure Nanjingyi of the Cult of Fragrance would have killed him. Thinking of his brother and seeing the dirty blood on Hu Yunyi's mouth, Zhang Xiaohu's mind lit up. He shouted, "Elderly, come with me, I have an idea." "Grandmaster, you said you have an idea?" Li Jian was pleasantly surprised, but he still couldn't believe it. "Yes, I really do have an idea." Zhang Xiaohu looked up at the sky and said anxiously, "But we don't have enough time." Come with me," Zhang Xiaohu shouted. He turned around and ordered, "Deputy Grandmaster 1, please bring the bodies of Shui Tiantian and Shui Yuping to the conference hall. Also, don't leak out what happened here, or you'll be killed." Then, he urged Li Jiandao, "Elderly, carry Elder Hu and follow me to the meeting hall." Li Jian didn't understand what Zhang Xiaohu meant, but when he heard Zhang Xiaohu say that he had a way to save Hu Yunyi, why would he care so much? He stretched out his hand and hugged Hu Yunyi's body, which was gradually turning cold. Then, he executed the ethereal steps and chased after Zhang Xiaohu. Lu Qingyang, Lu Yuiming, and the others also quickly chased after him. Only Wan Hai stayed behind to command the ethereal sex disciples to retrieve Shui Yuping's corpse. Before long, the meeting hall was right in front of them. Li Jian suddenly realized something and said in a trembling voice, "Grand Gang Leader Zhang, my big brother's injuries could only be healed by that expert from the Tao of Immortality?" At this moment, Zhang Xiaohu couldn't care less. Without turning his head, he said, "That's right. But I'm not sure." Li Jian's face was filled with ecstasy. He hurriedly said, It's fine. The expert from the Tao of Immortality doesn't interact with us martial artists. Even if Grand Gang Leader Zhang doesn't have the confidence to invite him out, but as long as Grand Gang Leader Zhang has the intention, this Li will be deeply grateful." Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. He didn't want to say that the expert from the Tao of Immortality could be summoned at any time. He was just worried that the so-called expert from the Tao of Immortality might not be able to save Hu Yunyi. Thus, he could only mumble, "Elder who is wholeheartedly devoted to the Misty School. This seat will naturally do his part." When everyone arrived at the conference hall, Zhang Xiaohu instructed, "Place Elder Hu on the ground. This seat will go and find that expert from the Tao of Immortality." After speaking, he walked behind the screen and entered the secret passage. What's wrong? Why is the expert from the Tao of Immortality in the Misty School's secret chamber? Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, and Lu Yuiming were puzzled. Without the permission of the sect leader of the Misty School, no one was allowed to enter the secret chamber in the conference hall. Thus, Li Jian and the rest didn't have the opportunity to enter. However, Li Jian and the rest immediately understood. Their faces were filled with joy. Since the expert from the Tao of Immortality was related to the Misty School, he would naturally know about the secret chamber. If the expert from the Tao of Immortality was in the secret chamber of the Misty School, who would have the most confidence? Of course, it would be the disciples of the Misty School. They would no longer have to fear the attacks of the Aroma Cult or the Righteous Tao Alliance. How could Li Jian not be happy? But will the expert from the Tao of Immortality be willing to help Big Brother? Li Jian couldn't help but feel nervous. Zhang Xiaohu had been in the secret chamber for a long time, but he still hadn't come out. Li Jian was a little anxious. He walked to the front of the secret chamber and stuck his head out to take a look. At this time, there was some movement outside the conference hall. When Wan Hai had returned with Shui Tiantian and Shui Yuping's corpse, seeing that the conference hall was silent, when Wan Hai didn't dare to speak. Only Shui Tiantian was sobbing softly. Her eyes were still looking at her father, unwilling to move away. Yes, only when you lose something will you know how precious it is. Although it was filthy in the eyes of others, what about in Tiantian's eyes? All that was left was the fatherly love that would never return. With a kachit sound, the door of the secret chamber opened. Everyone looked at the secret passage with hopeful eyes. The first person to come out was Zhang Xiaohu. There was no joy or disappointment on his face. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Zhang Xiaohu's back. When Zhang Xiaohua appeared in front of everyone, everyone was stunned. However, when they wanted to look behind Zhang Xiaohua again, the door of the secret chamber had already closed. You? Ren Xiaoyao? When Wen Hai was the first to cry out in alarm. You came here on Abbess Jingyi's orders? When Wen Hai suddenly realized, and then his face became gloomy. No. If this was a disciple of the pill expansion hall of the fragrance cult, he must have some immortal secret pills. If he took them out, he might be able to save Hu Yuni's life. But Zhang Xiaohu actually had dealings with a disciple of the fragrance cult, and even hid him in the secret chamber of the Misty School. Even if he saved Hu Yuni might not be able to accept his kindness. As for Zhang Xiaohu himself, how could he explain this? When Wen Hai said this, Li Jin and Lu Qingyang's faces also changed. They seemed to have thought of the same thing as Wen Hai. However, Lu Yueming was stunned at first, and then he asked curiously, Isn't this Zhang Xiaohua? How could it be a disciple of the fragrance cult? Ren Xiaoyao, who is that? Hearing this, Wen Hai was stunned on the spot, as if he was struck by lightning. He had suspected the relationship between Zhang Xiaohua and Ren Xiaoyao on Shixin Peak, but later he was dispelled by Ren Xiaoyao's identity. Now that he saw Zhang Xiaohua, of course, he thought that Zhang Xiaohua was Ren Xiaoyao. Lu Yueming had never seen Zhang Xiaohua on Shixin Peak, and now that it was night, under the lights, of course, he thought that Zhang Xiaohua was still the Zhang Xiaohua from a few years ago, so he blurted it out. When Wen Hai suddenly pointed at Zhang Xiaohua and asked Zhang Xiaohu, is he your biological brother Zhang Xiaohua, Ren Xiaoyao on Shixin Peak, the immortal master who recovered all of our martial arts? Zhang Xiaohu looked at Zhang Xiaohua, who was a little unhappy, touched his nose and smiled. It seems yes. Could it be that he is also the immortal master who used a flying sword to assassinate a deputy chief of the Righteous Alliance and 4 old consecrators on Piamiao Peak? Is he also related to our Misty School? Lu Yueming said in disbelief. Yes, Xiaohua is my biological brother, so of course he is related to our Misty School. That day on Piamiao Peak, it was Xiaohua who killed Ban Fugui and the others. Zhang Xiaohu looked at Li Jin and the others and slowly explained. Hearing that Zhang Xiaohua was not a disciple of the fragrance cult, Li Jin and the others' faces softened a little, but they were still full of doubts. After all, this Zhang Xiaohua was only a teenager. How is this possible? Lu Yueming almost jumped up. When Wen Hai had seen Zhang Xiaohua on Shixin Peak, but he had not seen Zhang Xiaohua since he saved Zhang Xiaohua and Zhang Xiaolong on the official road. If it was not for Zhang Xiaohua's chivalrous heart, Lu Yueming would have forgotten about him on the way back to the Misty School. Who would have thought that in just a few years, this young man had turned into an immortal master, replacing the image of the old immortal master in his heart with a youthful face and white hair. No one could accept this comparison in a short time. Yes, it's me. Zhang Xiaohua glared at Lu Yueming and Wen Hai. He still remembered what they had said about him behind his back. He said with a smile, You didn't expect that the stupid Zhang Xiaohua who couldn't even practice the Arhat fist, the unlucky Zhang Xiaohua who died in Jianghu long ago, was actually the immortal master in your hearts? When Wen Hai and Lu Yueming heard this and immediately blushed, they knew that Zhang Xiaohua had heard what they had said on the way back. How could they still doubt his identity as an immortal master? They both blushed and stepped forward. They bowed and said, We spoke rudely. Please punish us. Zhang Xiaohua was a little embarrassed. Who were these two? They were people who had saved him in the early years. He had just casually said it. Zhang Xiaohua immediately flicked his sleeve, and the two were lifted up by an invisible force. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Two heroes, why are you still so polite with me? I was just joking. Immortal Master, please, reach out and look at my big brother's injury. Li Jin stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Oh, elderly, get up quickly. There's no need to look. Zhang Xiaohua quickly helped Li Jin up. When Li Jin heard this, his heart thumped and he wanted to kneel down. However, How could Zhang Xiaohua let him do so? He raised his hand, and Li Jian couldn't move. He asked, "Elderly, why are you doing this? Please be merciful and save my big brother's life." Li Jian had never seen Zhang Xiaohua before, so he didn't have any thoughts about him. He just thought that he was an immortal master. "I didn't say I wouldn't save him, elderly, although the poison is about to invade Elder Hu's heart, but it hasn't happened yet. I saw it as soon as I came out. Of course, I don't need to see it now," Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Li Jian breathed a sigh of relief and was about to speak when Lu Qingyang next to him shouted, "Immortal Master, let's save my big brother first." Okay. Zhang Xiaohua took out a jade bottle from his bosom, poured out a pill, and handed it to Zhang Xiaohu. He said, "This is the antidote pill you took. Feed it to Elder Hu, and the poison will be removed." And Zhang Xiaohu didn't hesitate to take it. He walked to Hu Yuni's side and fed the antidote pill to Hu Yuni. Lu Qingyang wanted to go forward and help, but he was stopped by Li Jian. Zhang Xiaohua's antidote pill was really effective. After a moment, Hu Yuni woke up and shouted, "Shui Yuping, you beast. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip, thank you." -4. Chapter 11:31. When Hu Yuni shouted this sentence, he spat out another mouthful of dirty blood. Zhang Xiaohu knew what was going to happen next. He raised his hand and hugged Hu Yuni. He glanced at him and said, "Master, come with me." Wen Wenhai didn't know why, but he followed Zhang Xiaohu out. Li Jian was stunned and turned to look at Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, "Don't worry, I will return you an unpoisoned Elder Hu in a while." Li Jian was overjoyed and bowed again. "Thank you, immortal. AI. No need, no need. It was second brother who brought me here. If you want to thank someone, thank him." "Yes, I know." Li Jian's face hid his surprise. For a moment, everyone was amazed by what they saw in front of them. No one dared to speak loudly. Only Shui Tiantian was shocked by Zhang Xiaohua's young age. Then, he remembered his own life experience and Shui Yuping who had just passed away. He couldn't help but cry again. After a moment, Shui Tiantian seemed to have made a decision. He stood up and walked to Li Jian. He bowed and said, "Martial ancestrally." Li Jian looked at Shui Tian. He didn't know what attitude he should have towards him. He just waved his hand. "If you have anything to say, you should wait for Elder Hu to come back. You can say it to him." Martial ancestrally, disciple. Father did such a vicious thing. Although disciple didn't know about it, but it was disciple who personally sent the highly toxic medicinal pill into Great Grandmaster's mouth. Great Grandmaster's poisoning was also done by disciple. So, disciple doesn't dare to ask for Great Master's forgiveness. I also don't have the face to stay in front of Great Master. I also don't have the face to stay in the Misty School. Now, before Great Master wakes up, disciple asks martial ancestor Li to expel disciple from the Misty School and let disciple leave alone. This, Li Jian couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Shui Yuping did such a thing. In fact, it had nothing to do with Shui Tiantian. But, as Shui Tiantian said, he personally fed the poison to Hu Yuni. Even if Hu Yuni didn't mind, how could Shui Tiantian still stay in front of Hu Yuni? But Hu Yuni loved Shui Tiantian, and Li Jian had seen it with his own eyes. If he were to dispose of Shui Tiantian without permission, he was afraid that it would be difficult for Hu Yuni to explain himself when he woke up. At this time, Shui Tiantian turned around and bowed to Zhang Xiaohua again. He said respectfully, "Thank you, immortal elder, for saving the great ancestor. This makes me feel relieved. If it weren't for immortal elder, I would have gone with the great ancestor." Zhang Xiaohua reached out and patted Shui Tiantian's head, looking like an expert. "You child, don't think so much. This has nothing to do with you. You are just being used by others. But I have to repay my father's debt with my own hands." Shui Tiantian's eyes were filled with tears. He didn't know what to say. "In short, this Misty School. I don't have the face to stay any longer." Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She smiled and said, "Oh right, I heard from my second brother that you used a strange fist technique to compete with him a few days ago. Shui Tiantian's face turned red, and he said embarrassedly, I don't dare, it's just a small skill. How can it be compared with Master Zhang's? What insignificant technique. Zhang Xiaohua was displeased. Show me a set of techniques. Now? Here? Shui Tiantian was stunned. Well, here. You can do it. Shui Tiantian didn't know why Zhang Xiaohua was like this, but since it was the Immortal Elder's order, how could he disobey? Shui Tiantian endured the pain, and his chi sank into his dantian. He focused his mind, held his breath, and calmed his heart. He performed the 108 moves of the Big Dipper magical fist technique that Zhang Chengyue taught him from beginning to end. Zhang Xiaohua held her chin and shook her head or nodded as she watched. Li Jian and the others were at a loss. After Shui Tiantian finished performing the Big Dipper magical fist technique, Zhang Xiaohua turned to ask, Hero Lu, what do you think of this fist technique? This? Lu Yueming was stunned. He thought for a while and said, Immortal Elder, do you want to hear the truth or a lie? Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohua laughed. Hero Lu saved my life in the past. You don't have to call me Immortal Elder anymore. Just call me by my name. Lu Yueming shook his head like a rattle drum. It was just a coincidence that I saved you that day. It was effortless. Moreover, it was God who borrowed my hands. Even if it wasn't me, someone else would have done it. I don't dare to take the credit. Also, Immortal Elder healed my dantian and connected my bones. This has already repaid the favor of that day. How can I mention it again? In the martial arts world, those who are more powerful are the teachers. Since Immortal Elder has already set foot on the path of immortality, you are already beyond my reach. I am convinced that you are Immortal Elder, but if I call you by your secular name, I am afraid. I will feel uneasy. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. He didn't expect Lu Yueming to come up with so many reasons. He had no choice but to smile and say, Then you can call me whatever you want, Hero Lu. Then he asked, Hero Lu, do you think that this fist technique is quite bad? Yes, that's right. Lu Yueming said bluntly, I have observed that many of Tiantian's fist techniques are plagiarized from other fist techniques, such as the common Liuhe fist, Luohan fist, and so on. However, some of the moves are the same, while some are different. What kind of power can these fist techniques have when put together? Can there be no flaws? Hero Lu, you are right. This fist technique, when used by Tiantian, is indeed full of flaws. However, the flaws are in the moves that Hero Lu seems to be the same as other fist techniques. If all the fist techniques are different, then the flaws will no longer exist. This. Lu Yueming was speechless. He asked curiously, how did Immortal Elder know so much about this fist technique of my misty school? To tell you the truth, Hero Lu, when I was in Huanxi Villa, I was taught fist techniques by Captain He Tianchu. However, I was too stupid to practice Luohan fist or Liuhe fist. This fist technique is made by taking some moves from those fist techniques and putting them together. Not only was Lu Yueming surprised, but Li Jian and Lu Qingyang were also surprised. They said, that's impossible. This fist technique was recorded by Zhang Chengyue at a price of 1,000 taels of silver by faction leader O. Lu Qingyang grinned and gave a thumbs up. He praised, Immortal Elder, you are really a genius. How old were you at that time? You could already create a fist technique by yourself? It's nothing. Zhang Xiaohua was also modest. It's all a blessing. Then, he looked at Li Jian and said seriously, it's just that, even though this fist technique was sold to the ethereal sect, but looking at Tiantian's practice, it's just barely passable. It's too different from the fist technique in the manual. So, I'm thinking of buying the manual back and letting my disciples practice it alone. Immortal Elder's disciple? Li Jian was stunned. Which sect is Immortal Elder from? I'm preparing to establish the Big Dipper sect. When the time comes, I'll definitely invite Elder Li and the others to attend the ceremony. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Haha, Beidou school, I understand. No matter how stupid Li Jian was, he had already thought of the rumors about Rejuvenation Valley. Nie Qinyu had spread the name of Beidou school that day. Since Immortal Elder wants to establish a sect, then this fist technique manual can be given to Immortal Elder as a congratulatory gift. However, I'm only an elder and not a faction leader. Secondly, I've never heard of this fist technique manual. Even if I want to give it to a mortal elder, I can't. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and was about to speak when Shui Tiantian timidly said, Immortal elder, I know the whereabouts of the fist technique manual, eh? Where is it? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. Shui Tiantian thought for a moment and probed, if I give the fist technique manual to a mortal elder, can a mortal elder agree to a small condition of mine? Condition? Zhang Xiaohua's tone became slightly cold. It didn't matter if he wanted the fist technique manual or not. He just didn't want it to be leaked. Now that he heard Shui Tiantian talk about conditions with him, he couldn't help but become slightly angry. What conditions? Tell me, Zhang Xiaohua said coldly. Shui Tiantian seemed to hear the anger in Zhang Xiaohua's voice, but he gritted his teeth and pointed at Shui Yuping's corpse. Immortal elder, although my father did something wrong to the Misty School, but he was forced to do so. Now that he's dead, I hope the Misty School can let bygones be bygones and bury my father properly. Don't let his corpse be exposed in the countryside. This is your condition? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Yes, this is my condition. As long as a mortal elder agrees, I'll immediately tell you the whereabouts of the fist technique manual. Shui Tiantian nodded. That fist technique manual is in your possession? If I take action, do you think you can protect it? Shui Tiantian's face turned pale instantly. His small hands naturally covered his chest. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and turned to bow to Li Jian. He asked, Elderly, although Shui Yuping was guilty, he could atone for his crime with his death. Shui Tiantian's filial piety is commendable. I would like to agree to his condition. Elderly, please agree to it. Li Jian hurriedly returned the bow and said, Master Zhang brought Shui Yuping's corpse back and told his disciples not to reveal what happened today. Otherwise, they would be killed without mercy. I think Master Zhang didn't intend to reveal this matter to the public. Shui Yuping's corpse must be buried with dignity. Although I'm not the master of Misty School, this condition, I agree to it on behalf of Master Zhang. Shui Tiantian was overjoyed. He bowed to Li Jian and said, Thank you, second master. Elderly. Li Jian smiled bitterly and helped Shui Tiantian up. He thought to himself, it seems like this kid is determined not to stay in Misty School. Following that, Shui Tiantian took out an oil bag from his bosom and carefully opened it, revealing a brand new fist art manual inside. Then, he handed it to Zhang Xiaohua and said, Thank you, Immortal Elder, for your help. This fist art, please accept it. Why? Why is it so new? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. This is the only thing my master left me. When I miss my master, I take it out to have a look. I don't dare to tarnish it. Sigh, forget it. Shui Tiantian, since it was given to you by Zhang Chengyue, it's the only thing he left you. How can I take it back? You keep it for yourself. Zhang Xiaohua said sadly and waved her hand. Please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 1132. Thank you for your mercy. Shui Tiantian's face was filled with joy as he put the manual away. Zhang Xiaohua then asked, How many copies of this manual are there? Reporting to a mortal, there is only one copy. Then how many disciples practice this fist technique? Reporting to a mortal elder, Master is also not used to this fist manual. So, Master first taught this lowly one. Then this lowly one taught others. This lowly one used this fist manual to teach 8 people. As for whether there are other disciples, this lowly one does not know. What about these 8 people? Reporting to a mortal, among the 8 people, 4 of them traveled with me, and 4 of them stayed in Misty Mountain Villa. I don't know where they are now. As for the other 4, except for one who died of illness, the other 3 are in Young Eagle Hall. How are the other 3 practicing this fist technique? Zhang Xiaohua asked. Reporting to a mortal elder, this fist technique is really not easy to practice. As long as you practice any other fist technique slightly, the moves in this fist technique will immediately go out of shape. The other 3 junior brothers had long stopped practicing when they escaped from Ethereal Sect. Only this lowly one has been practicing because I miss my master. Good. Zhang Xiaohua nodded with a smile and asked again, you want martial ancestrally to expel you from Misty School. Do you have any plans? No. Shui Tiantian's face was gloomy. To him, Jiang Hu was really dangerous. He really didn't know what to do in the future. Ha ha ha, Zhang Xiaohua laughed. My Beidou School's 7 Stars Palace already has an owner. Shui Tiantian, you have already practiced my Beidou School's Fist of the Big Dipper. It can be said that you have fate with my Beidou School. Are you willing to enter my Beidou School and be Ai's disciple? This, Shui Tiantian almost couldn't believe his ears. Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, and Lu Yueming were also shocked. Their faces showed envy as they looked at Shui Tian. Immortal, don't deceive me? Shui Tiantian looked at Zhang Xiaohua blankly. Why would I lie to you? My Beidou School's boxing manual has already been given to you. Are you still doubting me? Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her nose and laughed. Master. Disciple Shui Tiantian greets Master. Shui Tiantian fell to the ground and cried. This time, Zhang Xiaohua did not help him up. Instead, she looked up with a smile at Hu Yuni, who was being helped in by Wen Wenhai and Zhang Xiaohu. At this moment, Hu Yuni's face was clearly rosy and was no longer as dark as before. Big brother. Li Jian and Lu Qingyang also saw him. They both ran over and asked in surprise, Big brother, are you all right? First Elder's poison is no longer a problem. I think he will ask Xiaohua to give him a few more pills. Zhang Xiaohu had just said. Zhang Xiaohua interjected, you don't need to take any more detoxification pills. Elder whose poison was poisoned by the righteous Tao Alliance. It's different from the poison of Chuanxiang cult. You only need 1 detoxification pill to detoxify him. Sect leader Zhang? What's going on? Hu Yuni turned around and asked. After listening to Zhang Xiaohu's explanation of what happened in Emo Xian's palace, Hu Yuni's face was filled with shame. He said in a low voice, Sect leader Zhang, this old man, this subordinate is really gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Please forgive me. Elder Hu, look at what you're saying. This lord knows that you don't have long to live, so you want to make arrangements after your death. As for this lord, there are many things that Elder Hu doesn't understand about my background and the way I do things. Therefore, it's normal for Elder Hu to misunderstand that it was arranged by Chuanxiang cult. I'm ashamed. As Hu Yuni spoke, he walked in front of Zhang Xiaohua and bowed. Immortal Elder, I believe that all the things that happened in my Misty School recently were caused by Immortal Elder. Zhang Xiaohua flicked her sleeve and supported Hu Yuni. She smiled and said, Elder whose body is weak now. Let's sit down and talk. After Hu Yuni sat down, Zhang Xiaohua nodded. These things were all done by I. Immortal Elder also bestowed Du Feng and Ding Chao with their martial arts? Yes. All the disciples of my Misty School who had their joints crushed and dantians pierced were all saved by Immortal Elder? Yes. When my Misty School counterattacked Ethereal Peak, the Righteous Alliance's Deputy Alliance Master and 4 old consecrators were also killed by Immortal Elder. Yes. Sect leader Zhang's Immortal Cultivation was also bestowed by Immortal Elder? It wasn't I, but he received the legacy of your Misty School. Then my Misty School's Immortal Cultivation legacy was also passed down by Immortal Elder? My Misty School's Immortal Cultivation legacy token was also bestowed by Immortal Elder? Yes. Sect leader Zhang subduing the disciples of the Righteous Alliance and Chuanxiang cult was also done by Immortal Elder? I also tried, but in the end, it was still because of sect leader Zhang's personal charm. Every time Hu Yuni asked a question, Zhang Xiaohua would reply with a sentence. Everyone in the meeting hall felt their hearts beat violently. Every sentence represented a turning point that would determine the fate of the ethereal sect. Every sentence represented a grace that the Misty School would never be able to repay. Every sentence represented that Zhang Xiaohua should be the true master of the Misty School. Immortal Elder, forgive this old man's stupidity, but please take a seat and accept a bow from the Misty School's disciples. Hu Yuni finally said seriously, if not for Immortal Elder, my misty school would have long been consigned to eternal damnation and become someone else's puppet. If I don't bow to you, this old man will never be able to rest in peace. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly waved her hand and pointed at Wen Wenhai and Lu Yueming, saying, Swordsman Wen and Swordsman Lu were also Ai's saviors back then. Even he didn't accept a bow from Ai, so how can I accept a bow from them now? Hu Yuni thought for a moment and nodded, saying, since a mortal elder says so, this old man won't force you. However, this old man would like to bow to a mortal elder once on behalf of the dead fourth brother and the master in heaven. This is to thank immortal elder for preserving the bloodline of my misty school. This, Zhang Xiaohua was put in a difficult position. Li Jin persuaded, immortal elder, please don't decline. This is our misty school sincerity, so please accept this bow. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she raised her eyebrows and said, in that case, I won't be pretentious. I've done so much for your misty school, so at least I've gained something. Hu Yuni was overjoyed and respectfully knelt on the ground. Zhang Xiaohua accepted the bow and hurriedly helped Hu Yuni up. However, before she could say anything, Hu Yuni said, this old man has always had a question. Would a mortal elder please enlighten me? Zhang Xiaohua helped Hu Yuni to a chair and said with a smile, feel free to ask. I have already told you everything I know. Yes, this old man wants to know. When my misty school was destroyed by the incense cult, the Dalan Temple, and the Righteous Alliance, why didn't a mortal elder do anything? Even if a mortal elder didn't do anything back then, my misty school wouldn't have suffered such a tragic fate. It turned out that ever since Hu Yuni woke up, Zhang Xiaohu had been trying to explain. There were still some things that he hadn't explained clearly. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she frowned slightly. Hu Yuni's question was rather disrespectful. However, after thinking for a while, she still said, it's not that I didn't do anything. Of course, I was still overseas. In terms of time, I had just stepped onto the path of immortality, so I didn't have the strength to stop that disaster. Yes, I believe that Chu Yunfei of your sect must have told Elder Hu that when he met I in the wilderness, I had just returned from overseas. At that time, your sect was already in disarray. Oh, that's right. Immortal Elder, now that you mention it, this old man really does remember. Immortal Elder seemed to have asked where the incense cult was at that time. Immortal Elder indeed went to find sect leader Zhang. Hu Yuni suddenly understood. Haha, Elder Hu, you can ask my second brother about the incense cult later. Great hero one has also met I, Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Immortal Elder's talent is truly unimaginable. In just a few years, it's actually so profound. Hee, even so, there are still people who say that I's stupid. Zhang Xiaohua still didn't let Wen Wenhai and Lu Yueming off the hook. Wen Wenhai glanced at Lu Yueming, who had an awkward expression on his face, and immediately understood what was going on. I'm just kidding, great hero one. Captain, he has been muttering like this. I'll have to talk to him later. Zhang Xiaohua laughed again. I wouldn't dare. When Wenhai and Lu Yueming also laughed. It was as if the Zhang Xiaohua now was the real Zhang Xiaohua and not some immortal elder. Oh, by the way, Elder Hu, just now I boldly accepted Shui Tiantian as my disciple. However, he is still a disciple of the Misty School. Elder Hu, please be magnanimous, and grant I my wish. Ai, come here to... Hu Yuni raised his hand and beckoned. Shui Tiantian had been kneeling on the ground and didn't get up. When he heard this, he stood up and walked to Hu Yuni's side. Hu Yuni reached out and touched Shui Tiantian's head with his hand very dotingly. He said lovingly, Tiantian, your father's matter is your father's. It has nothing to do with you. Even if you fed me the poison, I won't blame you because you didn't know it all. So, you must remember that from the moment your great ancestor found out the truth of the matter until he fainted, he never blamed you. Great ancestor. Shui Tiantian cried again and threw himself into Hu Yuni's arms. Io, second brother, I have an urgent matter. I'll leave first. This pill is for Elder Hu. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly shouted and threw a pill to Zhang Xiaohu. Then, she turned around and disappeared. Everyone was shocked and puzzled. They all looked at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, Xiaohua, this is a method of the immortal Tao. Look at me, I don't know either. As for what urgent matter Zhang Xiaohua had, Zhang Xiaohu didn't say anything. Shui Tiantian cried bitterly and didn't know about this. Hu Yuni didn't notice and waited for Shui Tiantian to stop crying before comforting him. However, since you have made up your mind, and it is indeed inappropriate for you to stay in the Misty School now, then follow the immortal to cultivate. But when you succeed in your cultivation in the future, you must remember my Misty School and take care of my Misty School. Yes, please rest assured, great ancestor. This disciple will definitely not forget the Misty School's great kindness to this disciple. Also, great ancestors care for this disciple. Yes, immortal elder. Hu Yuni looked up, but Zhang Xiaohua had already disappeared. Elder Hu, Little Blossom has something to do, so I'll leave first. Before I leave, I'll leave this pill for the first elder. The first elder will take this pill in a while. If nothing unexpected happens, the first elder's internal injuries and damaged meridians will be healed. Please cast a monthly vote, a recommendation vote, a collection, and a tip. Thank you. -4. Chapter 11:33. Really? Hu Yuni was pleasantly surprised. Of course it's true. Li Jin said, Faction Leader Zhang, you must have used this elixir to heal your subordinates' internal injuries back then, right? Elderly is right, it is this pill. Zhang Xiaohu was now very familiar with the meridian-soothing pill and recognized it at a glance. Big brother, hurry up and take it. I'll wait here to protect you. Lu Qingyang shouted. Here? That's not appropriate. Hu Yuni was a little hesitant. This is such a heaven-sent opportunity. Big brother, hurry up and take it. If anything happens, it'll be too late to regret it. Hu Yuni nodded, then looked at Zhang Xiaohu and said, Sect Leader Zhang, please give the order to expel Shui Tianan from the Misty School. Yes, I understand. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said to Shui Tiantian, Shui Tiantian, I expel you from the Misty School today. From now on, your actions have nothing to do with the Misty School. You are no longer a disciple of the Misty School. Do you understand? This disciple understands. Thank you, Sect Leader Zhang. Although she knew that her future was bright, although she knew that she would be able to see these amiable grandmasters and martial uncles in the future, although she was already mentally prepared, but when she heard Zhang Xiaohu say that she was no longer a disciple of the Misty School, Shui Tiantian couldn't help but feel sad, and tears fell from her eyes. All right, Tiantian, return to the Young Eagle Hall as usual. There's no need to rush to pack your things. I'll take you to see your martial uncles and senior brothers tomorrow. Yes, I'll follow sect leader's orders. Shui Tiantian's voice was unusually loud. After when Wan Hai left with Shui Tiantian, Hu Yuni swallowed the meridian-soothing pill under everyone's gaze. He sat cross-legged in the meeting hall and quietly adjusted his breathing. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohua opened her eyes and released her divine sense. Immediately, her face showed surprise. He saw Shui Tiantian holding a towel, a basin, and a small kettle on the ground beside him. He stood respectfully in front of his door. On the opposite side of Shui Tiantian, Xiaohua Ji's face was full of vigilance. She was also holding the snow-white towel in her hand and was staring at Shui Tiantian like a tiger watching its prey. What are you doing? Zhang Xiaohua removed the restriction on the hut and walked out. Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's deliberate footsteps, Shui Tiantian's spirit was lifted and his face became even more respectful. Ji Xiaohua's face also became anxious. She stretched out her leg and was about to rush over to open the door, but Shui Tiantian was faster than her. His figure swayed slightly, and he arrived in front of the door. He gently pushed the door open and called out, Master, good morning. However, before he could finish his sentence, 2 streaks of black light shot out of the door like arrows. Ah? Shui Tiantian was shocked and couldn't help but cry out. The basin in his hand almost fell to the ground. The 2 streaks of black light were Little Martin and Little Dog. The 2 little things floated in the air and stared unblinkingly at Shui Tiantian with their small black eyes. Xiaohua Ji's face flashed with joy. She wanted to cover her mouth with her hand, but halfway through, she saw Zhang Xiaohua's smiling eyes. Good morning, master. Xiao Huaji put down the snow-white towel on the ground and said respectfully, when I woke up, I suddenly saw second martial uncle bringing this child over. I don't know what he was doing, but he just stood there. No matter how I asked, he didn't say anything. Master, I don't know what the rules of Beidou school are, but in Misty school, I have been standing in front of Master's door in the morning since I was young to serve Master tea. So, last night, I earnestly asked sect leader Zhang, oh, second martial uncle, to bring me over to serve Master. Zhang Xiaohua came to a sudden realization and nodded his head subconsciously. Famous sects are indeed different. The rules are extraordinarily strict. Therefore, she smiled at Xiaohuaji, Little Black and Little Yellow. She said, this is my new disciple, Shui Teng. He is also a person with a hard life. You two should get to know each other. Yes, master. When Xiaohuaji heard that Shui Tiantian was a person with a hard life, she felt regret. She turned around and said, Junior Shui? Shui Tiantian, who had just been frightened, was still looking at the two little things flying in the air. Her heart was beating wildly. When she heard Ji Xiaohua call her junior brother, she immediately became unhappy. She pouted and asked, Master, didn't you say yesterday that this disciple has been practicing my Big Dipper sect's fist technique for a long time? This disciple has also observed that this brother has never practiced martial arts before. How can this disciple call him senior brother? As he said that, he looked at the two little things that had already flown away and felt relieved. He put the basin on the ground and turned around to take the kettle. He poured hot water and said with a smile, Master, please wash your face. Hee. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and walked over. She casually washed her face. At the same time, Xiaohuaji and Shui Tiantian handed over towels. Looking at the two towels, the two little hands, and the two expectant faces, Zhang Xiaohua felt warm in her heart. She took one towel with each hand and wiped her face with one towel. Then, she handed the towels to the two of them. Xiaohuaji and Shui Tiantian's faces were filled with joy and disappointment. They looked at each other and lightly snorted from their noses. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then, her face turned cold and she said in a low voice, Both of you, come here. Yes, master. The two of them felt Zhang Xiaohua's face and quickly followed. Standing in the small courtyard and looking at the rising sun, Zhang Xiaohua pointed and asked, Wait and see. What do you think? The two of them were stunned. After looking for a long time, they turned their heads back. You first. Zhang Xiaohua pointed at Xiaohuaji and said, Yes, master. Xiaohuaji said respectfully, It looks like an egg yolk. It's probably delicious. Shui Tiantian immediately laughed, but after laughing a few times, she immediately covered her mouth and looked at Zhang Xiaohua's straight face. Zhang Xiaohua held back her laughter with great difficulty. With a straight face, she said to Shui Tiantian, What about you? Master, a year's plan is in the spring, and a day's plan is in the morning. The morning sun has just risen, and it is the time when life is full of vitality. We martial artists should cherish time like gold and dance when we hear the chicken. Then, she asked again, Master, is this disciple right? Zhang Xiaohua was depressed. The disciples of this big sect were indeed different. They said things in a different way. Compared to her, this village disciple, Xiaohuaji, she couldn't compare. Tiantian is absolutely right. Zhang Xiaohua nodded calmly. Looking at Xiaohuaji, who was a little shy, she said, Xiaohua is not wrong. It's just because you're hungry that you think so much. Yes, master. Xiaohuaji's face softened. Zhang Xiaohua patted their shoulders again and hugged them in her arms. Facing the morning sun, she said, Master is not much older than you, and I'm not as knowledgeable as Zhang Chengyue. It's just that look, the rising sun is the best and most beautiful time of the day. Our Beidou school has just been built, and like the rising sun, it's full of vitality. And you are also the rising sun of our Beidou school. Only with your joint efforts can we have a bright future. If you just entered our Beidou school and have a grudge against each other and hate each other, how can our Beidou school be famous in Jianghu? When the two heard this, they couldn't help but feel ashamed. They were just children with a competitive nature. They only wanted to fight for favor in front of their master. How could they think so much? Master, we were wrong. Xiaohua Ji and Shui Tiantian both said in a low voice. All right, there's a saying in the olden days. Knowing one's mistakes is the greatest virtue. Since you don't have any relatives, you will be brothers in the future. You must love and care for each other. Yes, Master. This disciple will call Tian senior brother. He knows martial arts. Xiaohuaji immediately said. Xiaohuaji is older than me, so I will call him senior brother. Shui Tian also declined. He. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, Xiaohuaji has already kowtowed and entered our Beidou school. He can't run away from the title of senior brother. Although Tiantian's martial arts is strong, he can only be ranked behind him. Yes, Master. Shui Tian nodded and bowed. Greetings to senior brother. Don't. When Xiaohuaji heard this, a strange expression appeared on her face. She hurriedly waved her hands and said, Junior brother Tanan, although I am a senior brother, I am not senior brother. Senior brother. Is someone else? Then, where is senior brother? This little brother will pay his respects in a while. Shui Tian respectfully said. At this time, the sky had already brightened, and the small courtyard gradually became lively. However, Zhang Byron was still a child. So how could he wake up so early? Xiaohuaji laughed and said, Don't be anxious, don't be anxious. When senior brother wakes up, I will bring him to play. It won't be too late for you to pay your respects then. This little brother will listen to senior brother. Shui Tian did not seem to understand the meaning behind her words. Zhang Xiaohuaji could already guess Shui Tiantian's expression when he saw Zhang Byron. However, she did not know how he would greet Zhang Byron. Perhaps there was a precedent in the Misty school? Also, you have 3 martial aunts who can be considered as my junior sisters. In a while, let Xiaohua bring them to pay their respects. Your 3 martial aunts have a good relationship with each other, so you must learn from them. Yes, Master. The 2 of them bowed and replied, All right, Master is going to practice the Big Dipper mystical fist. The 2 of you can also learn from the side. Tian already has the foundation. Later on, follow the fist moves from the manual and teach them to your second senior brother. Yes, Master. Xiaohuaji and Shui Tian were overjoyed, especially Ji Xiaohuaji. Although she had already entered Beidou school, Zhang Xiaohua had not taught her anything yet. This could be considered her first lesson. After breakfast, Yin came over. Shui Tian also paid his respects to his 3 martial aunts. At this time, Zhang Byron had also woken up from his sleep. Under Zhang Byron's complete disregard, Shui Tian helplessly paid his respects to his senior brother. Looking at Nye Qinyu, Zhang Pinger, and Yin, as well as Zhang Byron, Ji Xiaohuaji, and Shui Tian, Zhang Xiaohuaji was very satisfied. As long as Chu Jing was brought over by the Misty School's disciples, the disciples of Beidou School would be complete. However, when she thought of Chu Jing, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat for no reason. Please vote monthly. Please vote recommendation. Please bookmark. Please tip. Thank you. 4. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.